Sort of Coming Chapter 10-17. Revisiting the old place, things are right and wrong, the past is like a dream. Shujian Lake, Sulan Island. The island owner, Tian Hujuan, who was originally in retreat, quietly left the retreat, set up a banquet in an attic on the top of the mountain, and sat opposite a young monk in a Confucian shirt and scarf. Tian Hujuan's face was pale, and he didn't even dare to say a few words of greeting, just like a schoolboy who knew he was stubborn and listened to the teacher's teaching. The young man put away his thoughts and said with a smile, "Is senior brother Qin still so busy?" Since the other party was in a questioning tone, Tian Hujuan quickly and carefully thought about his words, and replied in a trembling voice, "Qin Ju and Zhao Fuyang of Zhuanshan are old acquaintances, and I and Huanshan Fan Wan for Yuchunzi are not unfamiliar. Yuchuanji once came to Qingsha Island more than 100 years ago, and the master asked me to serve the guests on my behalf. A few years ago, Yu Zhen, the son of Yuchuanji, also quietly traveled to Shujian Lake and visited my place. Lindao, so this time Huan Mountain invited relatives. Qin Ju couldn't shirk it, so he went to the banquet alone. I needed to retreat, and I didn't want to have anything to do with Huan Mountain, so I declined the invitation. The Huan Mountain banquet is tonight. Hold. It should be answered, honestly, but Tian Hujuan will never say any unnecessary words, for fear of superfluous and unintelligible. For example, Huan Mountain, which now calls itself Shujian Lake. Tian Hujuan dared to say one more word. She hated that Yuchuanji so much in her heart for a while. She was so immortal, how could she know such a number one auntie? The young man took a sip of wine. It was the woody wine he bought from Chishuwei City on a special trip before he landed on the island. He joked, more than 100 years ago. A few years ago. It seems that senior sister Tian's speech is still so vague. Tian Hujuan turned pale in an instant, and hurriedly reported 2 accurate numbers. The young man raised his palm, wiped his mouth and nose with the palm of his hand, and said casually, "Senior sister, don't be so nervous, it's just called the Little Book Jane Lake, but it's not the real Book Jane Lake, not to mention the real Book Jane Lake. Now it's not just senior sister and me." Under his ass. The slugs of the Mud Bottle Alley in the past are now Gu Ken in the White Emperor City. He left Shujian Lake many years ago, and now he has just returned to Aquarius Continent from the wild world. Gu Ken asked for no reason. Master didn't agree to Lu Laoqing succeeding as the 4th sect master of the True Realm sect. Is it because he has the ambition to start a sect of his own, or is he afraid or hiding? Tian Hujuan's heart seemed to have been hit by a heavy hammer, and he was almost out of breath. It was the last time that Master brought her to visit Jiangtu, and she heard something that she shouldn't have heard. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to pretend she didn't know about Gu Kan's question. Senior sister didn't do anything wrong, so why be so nervous? There is no silver tail here. If I didn't know what senior sister is like, I would be suspicious of senior sister. Gu Ken put down the wine glass, stood up, and stood by the railing. The pair of flower cups on the table should be a congratulatory gift wishing senior sister a successful retreat and becoming a nascent soul in the future, not a fake. Tian Hujuan followed and got up. Gu Ken said, "Zenji is similar to Lu Kaisang of Oreo Island, so they may not be friends, but they are not quite the same in my heart compared to senior sister Tian and senior brother Qin." Senior sister Tian remembered to take care of her a lot and became the empress of nascent soul. During the next 100 years and hundreds of years of cultivation, she would help Zenji to do 1 or 2 things that helped Zenji in the snow. As for the icing on the cake, I don't want to owe senior sister's favor for this kind of thing. At that time, when Zenji is around, someone will naturally remind senior sister Tian to help out and help the Wudao faction to tide over the difficulties, so senior sister does not need to think about when and how to make a move. Tian Hujuan not only did not have a heavy heart, but heaved a sigh of relief and said softly, "I have no shirk, I will do my best." Gukhan smiled and said, "Senior Sister Tian is still the same. She speaks decisive words and does things as light as a feather." Tian Hyujin's scalp was numb. Gukhan said, "But he's better than me." This time, he escaped from the wild world. He went to a certain ferry and met Song Pangchai, who was already the king of Dali. He was just a neighbor in the same alley for many years. Now it seems that it is not interesting to meet again. Now, it's not as interesting as scolding across a door when I was young. Gukhan suddenly stretched out the back of her hand and gently pressed her heart against her heart. Her entire handsome face contorted. She muttered a word for no reason, and scolded Master Chao Ci, who had his mother. Because he had a fight with Chao Ci, who had already reached the first level, and the result was a tragic loss. Gukhan looked at the island that used to be the place where Lu Laoqing was in the past. Gonglu Island is now where the True Realm Patriarch Hall is located. The current suzerain, Lu Laoqing, is in the Immortal Realm, and he is also the first cultivator of the 5 realms in the Aquarius continent for more than 2,000 years. One continent is recognized as having great luck in his body. The chief consecrates Lu Jimao, the road name is Zhejiang, and the jade is pure. Li Fuchuan, the patriarch in charge of the law, is the only one in the first few seats of the True Realm sect. This female cultivator in the nascent soul realm was once a cultivator of the Yugui genealogy. Today, the entire Shujian Lake with vast waters is almost the private boundary of the Jade Gazong's descendant. The reason why it is almost is because there are 5 islands, independent sects, and not under the jurisdiction of the True Realm sect, so it is particularly eye-catching. Gukhan turned to look elsewhere. Xingyi and Ma Di were practicing there now. When Jiang Shangjin served as the sect master of the True Realm sect, he did not have the consideration of the Zhu Shitang, nor did he notify the upper sect. Sold it to Luopao Mountain at a very low price. The Ministry of Rights secretly recorded it in the book, and the land deed was delivered. It really cannot be investigated. There are many loopholes, because this contract has neither the signature of the mountain owner Qin Pin Ganjingzong and Yuguazong were also kept in the dark, and they just cooked rice with raw rice. Because Jiang Shangjin used the identity of the sect master of the True Realm sect and the identity of the chief of Luopao Mountain to worship Zhou Fei, it was like selling the 5 islands from the left hand to the right hand. Back then, when Zhu Lian heard about this incident, he couldn't help but admire. Chief Zhou's coquettish handwriting was amazing. It must be amazing. Of course, Jiang Shangjin paid for this immortal money from his own pocket. Anyway, there were only 100 Guyu money. At the beginning, neither the True Realm sect nor the Dali court made the matter public. Since then, these 5 islands have been under the name of Zenji, a native of Shujian Lake. Later, Yuguizong noticed that something was wrong, and he planned to make a big fuss and take Jiang Shangjin, a filthy dog, back to Shenjuan Peak Patriarch Hall and spit on his face. As a result, Jiang Shangjin returned to the first meeting of the sect, and it was not yet anyone's turn to ask the teacher to ask the guilt. Sun Yuan resigned as the suzerain, and Jiang Shangjin took over instead of Wei Ying, the peak leader of Zhui Peak. After the war, the Wild Demon clan besieged Yuguizong, and they couldn't care less about such trivial matters. It's just that after so many years, Luopeishan has not collected this enclave. It seems that Zenji intends to establish a school based on this, so he can stand on his own. In fact, this is a certain hidden danger. Once Yuguizong and Wei Ying are investigated, and the 3 parties of the Dali court are involved in a lawsuit, it is very likely that the Zhenjingzong will take back these 5 islands. After all, Jiang Shangjin seems to be a complete white man in the upper and lower cases, in addition to his identity as the head of the Jiang family. In fact, the more than 40 top positions in the True Realm sect Patriarch's Hall belonged to the genealogy cultivators from the upper sect, and the number was very small, accounting for less than 20%. Even so, the True Realm sect has never been able to suppress the hidden dangers of the field. After all, the three suzerains before and after, Jiang Shangjin, Wei Ying, and Lu Laoqing, alone are enough to shock the heroes. Wudao sect, there are currently 200 small cultivators recorded in the book. Almost all of them are ghost monks and ghosts, but if someone is elsewhere, if they use the method of qi, they will find that there is no heavy pollution on these islands. The suffocation is rather clear. In the Patriarch's Hall, there is only one portrait hanging, but it is not the hanging portrait of the founder of the mountain, Zenji, but a thin-faced scholar in blue shirt, with a jade hairpin on his head and hands behind his back, with a warm expression. In this Wudao faction, Zhang Tu has the identity of a named guest secretary, and his Longhuan faction is considered to be allied with the Wudao faction. As for the name of the Wudao faction, it has been criticized all the time. Ma Di complained to Xing Yi a lot about this, but changing the name of the sect is of great importance. The Ministry of Rights, reporting, inspection, and approval procedures are cumbersome. Ma Di is a scumbag, and she is a ghost. How dare you go to the capital of Dali to see what the world is like? It was already Ma Di's limit, and that was because she and Xing Yi were with Gu Kan at the time. The female ghost Ma Di, as the second in command of the Wudao faction, she has lived in that fox fur talisman for so many years and is unwilling to move her nest. She has no ambition in the matter of breaking the boundary of cultivation, but is most interested in the burden of living with small money to make a lot of money. She is also the island owner of Yunjiu Island. The name of the island comes from the illusion of Yunjiu drags the rain. Gu Kan asked coldly, "Is the wedding banquet tonight?" Tian Hujuan nodded and said, "I remember correctly, just tonight." Gu Kan joked, "Is it the youngest Zhao Yan, or the third girl Yu Yi? If I remember correctly, she seems to have an affair with the goddess of the mountain who fell into the Yuanshan temple." Tian Hujuan shook his head blankly. "It is Yu Yi who is going to marry, but I have never heard of the privacy of these Hehuan mountains." Qin Ju only said that the candidate for the son-in-law was actually decided by default. It is in Miyun Kingdom, south of Aquarius Island, from a water mansion in Baihua Lake. Young son of the prince. Speaking of this, Tian Hujuan suddenly remembered the two flower cups on the table. Sure enough, Gu Kan knew everything. Miyun Country is a water town and country. There is a huge lake in the territory, called Baihua Lake. The name of this lake sounds gentle, but it is a vast water area with extremely strong water and extremely cloudy waves. It is also called Hulu Lake because it is located in two large and small lakes. The junction is like a waist, just like a gourd. In the central boundary of this waist waterway, there is a Longwang temple where the temple eats incense and incense. The shelter side has good weather, because the lake is foggy and rainy for at least half a year. Passing through the waters of the Dragon King Temple, the waterway is slim, and it is often pitch black where you can't see your fingers. In the season of strong winds and waves, the temple blessings of the Dragon King Temple in the early years will be met. Quickly turn on the lights, ring the bells and drums, and the ship can follow the light and sound, and safely dock, and continue to sail until the storm calms down. Because of their merits in protecting the soil and controlling the water, the emperors and monarchs of various dynasties in the Miyun Kingdom in history have repeatedly added seals and posthumous titles to the two generals in the Dragon King Temple, and finally one was named king and the other was named uncle. It's just that a few years ago, the statue of the Dragon King worshipped in the temple collapsed for no reason, and the two generals, enshrined in the front hall and the two generals, in the main hall were also missing. Occupying the temple, in just over 10 years, I don't know how many official and merchant ships capsized and sank here. Now, as long as they pass the Huluku waterway, local boatmen, passing tourists and merchants have to face the direction of the old Longwang temple, burn incense, burn paper, and sacrifice to cattle, sheep, and set off firecrackers to pray for smooth sailing. Gu Kan smiled and said, "The feng shui turns around, and a good Baihua Lake is not as good as our Shujian Lake." Tian Hujuan looked at his nose and heart, and said nothing. Gu Kan said, I still envy a person like Xing Yi, who has become a general in a daze, and is a minister in an ignorant manner. Maybe this means that stupid people have stupid blessings. Tian Hujuan hesitated for a moment, then said something from the bottom of his heart, it's really enviable. Gu Kan said, if you want to break away from the genealogy of the True Realms sect and Qingsha Island, I can help. Tian Hujuan fought a battle between heaven and man in his heart, and finally shook his head. He really didn't dare to get involved with Gu Kan too much. It is better to seek peace and become a nascent soul. Gu Kan smiled and said, forget it, my senior aunt Han Chaoshi originally wanted me to help her find a direct disciple, but I think you are the best candidate. Tian Hujuan hesitated to speak, but finally remained silent. The weather is getting warmer, the spring is mellow, and the birds are buzzing. Ma Diawai was holding a few long wooden boxes and a package on her back. She came to the ferry on the shore of Yunzhou Island, and was going to take a boat to visit Zushan Kugu Island and the vassal Xinchang Island. Nowadays, there are so many rules and regulations in Shujian Lake that the cultivator of genealogy must have a booklet by hand and read it frequently to avoid breaking the rules. The True Realms sect has given clear regulations, and this is the power of the sect. Wudao Pai is his own site, and there are no such restrictions, but Ma Di prefers to take a boat to cruise the lake slowly compared to Yufeng. Almost all of Yunzhou Island are female cultivators, and the punter is an old woman, who looks thin but has a lot of strength, and said with a smile, Island owner, have you gained something again? Ma Di joked, whether you earn or lose, it depends on luck. If you miss it, you will get a reward when you come back. If you lose, it will be deducted from your monthly salary. She just received a few calligraphy and paintings and a few flower and bird albums, and she plans to ask 2 experts to help her to identify the authenticity. The old woman smiled and said, the island owner is really a good man, and he has a good family, but I don't know which man will be so lucky to marry the island owner in the future. Ma Di smiled brightly, whether it is a loss or an earning, there is a reward. On the side of Kugu Island, the Zushan of the Wudao school, there is a guest minister. It is a ghost, picked up by Ma Di from the roadside in his early years. Extravagant, named Deng Linzhong, he is not good at words and has a cowardly temperament, but he is proficient in appreciation and has a mantra, this thing is not quite right. As for why it was wrong, Deng Linzhong couldn't say why. He wasn't like Yuan Xian who could clearly say something, but after passing through the antique waiting for Linzhong, he said it was wrong. It turned out that it was indeed a fake. High imitation. As time goes by, Yuan Kong, who looked at Deng Linzhong horizontally and vertically at first, turned his dissatisfaction from the earliest oral dissatisfaction into a sincere one. The wind and the sun are bright during the day, and the wind and moon are in the same sky at night. People and ghosts coexist here, and the relationship is harmonious, like a paradise. Xing Yi is now a legendary monk in the world of Shujian Lake. It's not how outstanding his cultivation aptitude is, after all, he hasn't formed an elixir yet, but Xing Yi's luck is really good. Back then, the boy who was born with a special physique was picked up by Zhang Tu and led him away from Maui Island. The boy who was destined to die in his teacher's sect was transferred to Qingsha Island. Selected to serve as a helper, the 2 sides lived next to each other on the mountain gate. Later, when Chen Pingon left Shujian Lake, Xing Yi followed Gu Kan again, and then waited until Gu Kan left his hometown and traveled to other continents, and eventually became the heir of Jing Juzhong in Baidi City. Disciple, and before Gu Kan left, Eve borrowed Zenji a peace card issued by the Dali Punishment Department. It was only later that Xing Yi learned that Gu Kan's tricks were sky-high, and he directly turned the owner of this trouble-free card into him Xing Yi. Zhang Tu was very impressed with this. The typing no problems card given by Dolly was recognized as more valuable than the identity of the sect genealogy. It is extremely difficult to transfer the no care card to Zenji. It is not as simple as buying and selling real estate and delivering land deeds. Then, when Xingyi was walking alone on Kugu Island, he accidentally picked up a secret book on the ground. On the page of the preface, there was a prophecy written, 500 years later, the person named Sing will get it. It's a pity that this line of characters is the kind of ink that hasn't been dried yet. It's really deceiving. Of course, it was Jiang Shangzhen's handwriting. The origin of this secret book is indeed not simple. It is a secret book that Jiang Shangzhen valued more. It can make Jiang Shangzhen feel that it is valuable. The rarity can be imagined. The earliest relics from the ancestors of the Jiang family were obtained from the blessed land of the Cloud Cave. Because only ghost cultivators can study this book, the threshold is high, and the requirements for the qualifications of ghost cultivators are extremely high, so it has always been relatively tasteless. Open a door, reputation. But no matter how tasteless this cheap book is, there are a lot of ghosts in the world, especially those who are sneaky but fat, and if Jiang Shangzhen really wants to make money, he will not worry about selling it at all. Luckily, he left Maoyue Island and served as a book boy for Chen's accountant on Qingsha Island. Gu Kan presented a no-mind card and obtained a secret book of ghost Taoism of high rank. In less than 30 years, these 5 events happened one after another, making Zenji the head and founder of a sect. Not long ago, there was a female ghost who had just joined the Wudao sect. Her name was Tang. The Wudao school is a small sect, and there are very few monks in the 5 realms, so after she joined the genealogy, she moved to the Ancestors' Hall to worship. If the ghosts in the world want to wander in the daytime, unless they are successful in their cultivation, or rely on some protective spiritual tools that can block the scorching sun and circulate their own qi between the heavens and the earth, they will end up miserably. It's just that there are some ghosts with little success in Taoism. They have to travel through mountains and waters under the hot sun during the day. This move is similar to walking water. The number of knives and soldiers, they must leave the original Yin house, otherwise it will lead to many unexpected disasters. It may be a thunder in the sky, a few lightning strikes, they will disappear, hundreds of years of hard practice, pay flowing waters. This requires them to seek a talisman as a customs clearance ultimatum to walk in the world. The best candidate is often the kind of scholar who is full of literacy. Luck. As for those who are strong in martial arts, avoid it, that is moths to fire, martial arts fists are heavy, and there is a lot of yang, and ghosts can't avoid them, how can they take the initiative to seek death? Before Tang left a ghost house in the city that had been abandoned for many years, she just hid under the umbrella and wanted to cross the river with the scholar, trying to avoid the eyes and ears of the river and the nearby city god, and took the opportunity to escape the disaster. I met an immortal master in green shirt who could see through her identity, and it was almost a surprise. Find a monk named Zenji. Heart Island, the largest of the 5 islands, is said to be the slaughtered remains of a great demon of Shujian Lake. It just sounds more infiltrating, but it is actually a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters. Yuan Xian, the current island owner of Xinchang Island, was one of the many Shijianhu cultivators who died in Gu Kan's hands. Besides Xing Yi and Ma Di, he was very familiar with Qin Pingan and Gu Kan at the beginning. Every time he went out, Yuan Xian often accompanied Ma Di as a bungalow. Lots of leaks. As one of the few meritorious veterans of the Wudao school, Yuan Kong is now serving as a worshipper, and his identity is somewhat similar to that of a dog-head military division. He has a decent amount of money, and he has accepted a few young girls who are lonely and wild ghosts as disciples. Ma Di did not expect Yuan Xing and Deng Linzhong to stay together, playing a game, and Xing Yi, a stinky chess basket, was watching the game. On the side, there is that Tang making tea, with a hosta and snail bun, a little fat powder, and a Phoenix Group tea cake. She is really a beauty. Ma Di opened the package and put all the treasures she just received at a low price on the table. She was not in a hurry to ask the two masters to help her. She moved a chair and said solemnly, "Tsutong, Mr. Chen must be watching. I'm still pity on you, let alone a man. I like it when I look at it. Mr. Chen is the most sympathetic." Xingyi said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. How could Mr. Chen act like this? Don't make such jokes in the future, and make Miss Chu lightly." Chu Tang said with a smile, "Master Xing, as long as that Mr. Chen doesn't mind, I don't care." Ma Di gave Tsutong a thumbs up, then turned to look at Xingyi. TSK, Master Xing, I've been with Mr. Chen for so many years, but I haven't learned anything, but I have a sour Confucianism, but I learned it. 7, 8, 8. Xingyi smiled and said, "It's good to learn a little bit." Chu Tang asked curiously, "Is Mr. Chen a man of Taoism who is skilled in his appearance? How many jiazi is there in the mountain?" "She has a temperament of indifference to the world. When she arrives here, she lives in a secluded place and has no friends. What's more, the ghosts of the Wudao faction now like to practice separately, and they hardly visit each other." Yuan Xing and Deng Linzhong looked at each other, and they both envied this Tsutong. She was a cultivator who was personally introduced by the young hidden officer. It's just that she still seems to be kept in the dark, and she doesn't know the true identity of Mr. Qin. The head of Zhang and Island Master Ma have tacitly concealed this matter on purpose. Yuan Kong was born in a wealthy local family in a small country in the south. He is a recognized juvenile prodigy. He was only 16 years old when he served as an inspector of the National History Institute. The imperial court made books, and the inscriptions on the inscriptions of a country's honorable officials. During his lifetime, Yuan Xian liked to talk freely and paid attention to moral knowledge. When he was a local official, he despised the pragmatic and practical affairs such as arrests in prisons, gold grains and money, and books and accounts. The Yuan family has a very rich collection of books. It used to be known as the first in the southeast of a country. Yuan Xian personally searched thousands of books and built a new library called Qinjianju. Whether it is a collection of everyone, there is a very important sign, that is, whether the family collection can be compiled into a book based on the entries. It's just that Yuan Kong lost his freedom at Shujian Lake after he left his hometown to practice Taoism. He couldn't communicate with him, and he could no longer take care of the family. After only 2 generations, the family was in ruins. Servants steal or resell, and concubines destroy more than half. A few years ago, Yuan Kong had been to his hometown and only saw something hurt. Because of Zenji's relationship with Qin Pingan and Gu Kan, there are people who support it, and there is a Luo Pao mountain as a backer, so the Wudao school monks now have the earth-shaking Shujian Lake, which is generally more comfortable, compared to those for the disciples of the outer sect of the True Realm sect who have not yet entered the genealogy. The Wudao school does not say that they are superior, at least they will not be inferior. As for why Ma Di was always reluctant to restore her true face, she was extremely open-minded and only said that Su Zi had something to say, "This body is like a family. Since this is the case, then what to do with this?" Xingyi suddenly said, "Ma Di, I'm going to go to the capital of Dali." Ma Di asked, "Have you decided on a new name? Do you want to report to the Ministry of Rights in person? Or do you have a letter exchange with Mr. Chen behind my back?" Xingyi shook his head and said, "How dare you trouble Mr. Chen with such a trivial matter, just want to go out to relax." It turned out that Mr. Chen sent a letter before, so that Zenji could go to the capital when he had time, and he learned a lot. The letter also introduced an old immortal to him, saying that the old Yuaning Lu Jia was that alley. The gatekeeper, Xingyi, only needs to stop at the entrance of the alley, report his identity, and say that he is familiar with Qin Pingan, and he can also let Zhao Duanming, a young man from the Zhao family in Tianshui, travel the capital with Xingyi, saying yes he Chen Pingan's meaning can be. So Xingyi wanted to follow Mr. Chen's suggestion and take a trip to the capital of Dali. Ma Di angrily said, how can it be a trivial matter? Xingyi smiled and said, the name of the sect, it's fine, in the dark. There is an ancient temple surrounded by lakes on all sides, and there is a narrow stone ladder winding up in front of the mountain gate. The young Taoist sat on the steps, at the entrance of the mountain. At the foot of the island near the water, there was a stone-carved leprechaun carrying a stele, and on his back was a large stone stele weighing 10,000 caddies, engraved with the passage of clouds and rain. Taoism. This place used to be one of the many shrines of a real dragon. She stayed here not many times in the past, but it is one of the very few traces that have been preserved. The seal is cast on the forehead, and the horns are slightly stained. Lu Qin sighed, the clouds and water drifted together, and it was like autumn in his heart. Looking at the big turtle, Lu Qin smiled and said, don't pretend to be asleep over there, talk about it, how did you escape, then why didn't Zhu Yan knock it down with a stick? The stone stele carrying the stele actually came to life, twisting his neck and looking at the Taoist priest wearing the lotus crown. Lao Yuan seemed extremely guilty, and said hoarsely, in those days, there was a catastrophe, so I told concubine Fei and Zhu Yan that I am an old acquaintance with Headmaster Lu. I follow the law and have been ordered to guard the Baihua Lake Temple here. By the way, I practice Taoism, learn and carry the Book of Heaven on my back. Sooner or later, I will go to Baiyujing to meet Headmaster Lu. If they dare to be here make a mistake, be careful that Headmaster Lu is angry. The little one dares not hide it, and that's roughly what he said. The two throne monsters let go of the little one when they heard the words, and even kept the Baihua Lake together. Headmaster Lu's light. Lu Qin tooted, you speak very arrogantly, do they really believe it? De Yuan nodded his head and said in a muffled voice, it's a fluke, luckily, thanks to Headmaster Lu. Lu Qin waved his sleeves, and there appeared a picture of a lady who looked like a fine brush. It was the figure of the woman surnamed Lu, Wufu, and said, Pin Dao's memory is not very good, and it is not convenient for frequent fortune-telling now. You can help me, yes, not one of the many palace maids around her. De Yuan's eyes suddenly gleamed with golden light. He fixed his eyes, nodded and said, yes, yes. The appearance has changed a lot, but the temperament has not changed much, especially those eyes, you can't go wrong. Lu Qin broke up the scroll and said with a smile, old man, it's rare to see each other again. If you want to complain, hurry up. I implore Headmaster Lu to show kindness and help remove the stone tablet. De Yuan said cautiously, please turn around. Lu Qin stretched out his hand to cover his ear. What? The wind is too strong, I can't hear it clearly, speak louder, ask for nothing, okay, goodbye. After the Headmaster Lu left the island, he turned his head towards the big dragon on the lake again, and after a full hour, he snorted. After another half an hour, the laughter of Headmaster Lu resounded in the De Yuanqin Lake. A monk is not a device for condensing the Tao if he is impetuous. De Yuan was not too frightened, but Zhang Jiaolu was a little better. He had a lot of energy, and scolding him a few words was nothing. At the same time, the Taoist text on the stone tablet fell like autumn leaves. After a while, the stone tablet was still on the back of De Yuan, but the stone inscribed Taoism was gone. Lao Yuan then condensed into a human body, full of water transport energy, holding a pocket stone tablet in his hand as a treasure of his life, raised his arm high, and slammed into a water house at the bottom of the lake, and said slowly, I am the violent one. Temper, can I bear with you? Hehuan Mountain, Fengla Town at the foot of the mountain. In an alley, Lu Tai and the girl walked in the front, and Lu Mo walked in the back, about 5 or 6 steps away from them. She only felt a flower in front of her, and the blurred figure of the young Taoist appeared in front of her with a smile on her face, exhaled softly at her. Like the wind blowing sand, Lu Mo, who had no time to react, was a young female master with a bottleneck in the martial arts of the 5 realms. Just being sighed by the Taoist priest, her flesh and blood melted in an instant, and her bones and muscles turned into countless golden stars. Sideways drifted away. After Lu Tai took 2 steps, he suddenly turned his head. Because Lu Mo, who should have made even and subtle footsteps, actually lost her sound. Lu Tai breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Mo was still in the alley, but she seemed a little absent-minded. Lu Mo shook his head. He seemed to have taken a nap inexplicably. But I always feel like I'm missing something. The woman didn't know that, after the Taoist priest blew her limbs with a breath of true breath, she was like a life and death experience. In this way, he changed his mind and reborn. In this life, Lu Mo, who was only a martial artist in the 6 realms, has a pair of fairy bones with golden branches and jade leaves as if his roots were reshaped. In the entire Hehuan mountain area, no one can find a strange picture. The sign of enlightenment that the Taoist priests of Jingxianan have been pursuing tirelessly is the appearance of a golden snake that is no more than a foot long at the fingernail that is more than the tendon. In this alley at the foot of the mountain, an extremely slender golden long line suddenly lit up, and a small red gold snake suddenly lifted into the sky, dragging it for an extremely long distance in the night, more than 1,000 miles. In an instant, the golden thread was pulled together with a Taoist boy in a Taoist temple in Shengao sect. A golden lotus flower bloomed on Lu Mo's shoulder and on that Dao Tong's wrist. Qi Zhen, the heavenly monarch of Shengaozong, opened his eyes suddenly, got up and took a step back to shrink the mountains and rivers, looking at the long golden line that gradually dissipated in the Taoist temple on the mountainside. This is called Daoyuan. The beginning seems to be the Hehuan mountain on the border of Qingxing country. Qi Zhen didn't even dare to do the math, but was very surprised. Could it be that Headmaster Lu has returned to Haoran? Just why go to such a small place? In the rough alley of the town, the young Taoist priest leaned against the wall with his arms wrapped around his arms, yawned, and said with a smile, "Return to your original face from 3,000 years ago." In Shujian Lake, a flat boat rises and falls with the waves. Some people stop the boat here, the faint wind and smoke trap the water, and they come to go boating and fishing in the evening. The horizon and the lake are full of crescent moons. In addition to an old man who was fishing, there was an extremely handsome young man sitting on the bow of the boat, with a slender body and a feminine face, dressed in white, not holding a rod, just to accompany him to enjoy the scenery. The boy asked, "Senior Zhang, I heard that there was once a Hengbo island here." The old man nodded and said, "You are a rare reading seed in Shujian Lake. I heard that in recent years, you have been secretly compiling local chronicles and chronology of Shujian Lake." The young man hummed, "It's okay to be idle, just entertain yourself." The old man suddenly lifted the pole, dragged a pale golden carp in his hand, and threw it into the fish basket. The boy asked, "Senior Zhang, can I ask you a question?" It was just a simple question, but the old man seemed to have heard a big joke. First, he couldn't help laughing out loud, then burst into laughter. The young man respected as Island Master Lu asked suspiciously, "Why is Senior Zhang laughing?" The old man looked at the moonlit lake, and said, "If I remember correctly, Island Lord Lu was Gu Kan's previous Devil King before he came to Shujian Lake, because he has a brother who might enter the nascent soul realm at any time, is rampant and lawless. Unexpectedly, now Gu Kan has gone to Baidi City, and you, Lu Kaisang, have also taken over Oreo Island, and you have even compiled a local chronicle. In those days, before you speak, where would you be with me, Zhang Tu? Can you ask a question? I guess you don't bother to talk nonsense before you kill someone, right?" Lu Kaisang didn't get angry when he heard the words, but nodded, almost. Life or death is a matter of preference. There were no rules in Shujian Lake at that time. The old man said with emotion, the Shujian Lake used to be very similar to the wild world. The only rule is that there are no rules. This fishing old man was once a veteran of Qingsha Island. He was the first to follow Lu Jimao, the true monarch of Zhejiang River. He worked hard together and made a path. Zhang Tu assisted the latter to become the short-lived monarch of Shujian Lake. Later, Lu Laoqing returned to Gonglu Island. Then Dali rode down south, and finally the True Realm sect took over Shujian Lake. Zhang Tu then changed his identity, unexpectedly left Qingsha Island, transformed himself, and became the head of the Langhuan sect. The Huan sect belongs to the kind of sect on the mountain that is not in the mainstream at all. Unlike the Oriole Island where Lu Kaisang is located, it has a seat in the ancestral hall in the True Realm sect. Lu Kaisang continued to ask, why didn't Senior Zhang continue to follow Chief Lu? Lu Jimao is now the chief worshipper of the True Realm sect. In the past few years, there has been a gossip that has nose and eyes. The current suzerain Lu Laoqing has plans. He hopes that Lu Jimao of the Jade Pure Realm can take over the position of suzerain. It seems that Lu Jimao refused. Based on the friendship between Zhang Tu and Lu Jimao, they are recognized as right-hand men. Lu Jimao has a high position in the Xinjing sect. As long as Zhang Tui enters the Zhenjingzong and follows the chicken and dog to the sky, it is a normal thing. It is easy to be an official and half a job. Maybe he can make an exception for him. Even if he is not a golden elixir, he can become a member of the patriarchal hall of a sect. Difference. Zhang Tu smiled and said, everyone has their own aspirations. Zhang Tu said with a smile, you've the 10 heroes of the book, Jane Lake, in just 20 years, with your own opportunities, the few years of our old people seem to be inferior to you, and they can be compiled into a plot soon. The twists and turns and dangers are full of dangers, and there is no shortage of fragrant novels. After being engraved and sold by the bookseller's edition, I believe that the sales will not be bad. Lu Kaisang shook his head and said, the so-called 10 heroes are actually only 9. In the past, Gukan took the lead, and the 9 of them were calling for wind and rain in Shujian Lake. LV Kaisang's senior brother Zhong Su is the island owner of Oriole Island. The senior brothers are actually more than 500 years old. Zhong Su successfully entered the nascent soul more than 10 years ago. Not long after he left, he began to retreat again. Every time the Xinjing patriarch Shirtang discussed matters, it was often LV Kaisang, the junior brother who succeeded the island owner, who did the work. Because LV Kaisang was a close disciple of the founder of the Oriole Island, Zhongsu respected and favored LV Kaisang very much. Just like Huang, he once made a joke, let Lu Kaisang smear fat powder, and then put 2 big steamed buns in his arms, he will be more beautiful than a woman, and then it is no problem for Gu Kan to be the capital of the class of the gang of little girls. LV Kaisang was already at the bottleneck of the Dragon Gate realm and was about to form pills, so this time out was the last time to relax before retreating. Lu Zimeo's second disciple, Tian Hujuan, became Lu Zimeo's first apprentice and Gu Kan's elder sister because her brother was beaten to death by Gu Kan. It's just that Tian Hujuan hasn't shown much in these years. After all, he is a golden elixir, but he is not as eye-catching as her 2 junior brothers Qin Ju and Chao Zhe who have not yet established elixir. Fan Yan, the young city master of Chishui City, who was recognized as a fool at that time, turned out to be the smartest person in the city. The former prince in distress, Han Jingling, became the emperor of Shihao Kingdom, and Huang He became a powerful minister of Shihao Kingdom. The father and son jointly controlled the state affairs. Yuan, the master of Gumming Island's young island, cast a good baby that others could not envy. His parents were both golden pills, so Gumming Island was able to have 2 top positions in the True Realm Patriarch's Hall. Unfortunately, Yuan Yuan's own cultivation aptitude was mediocre. So far, I have only been in the Sevuing realm. A few years ago, I got a lot of fairy money and ran out to do business. It is said that I was scammed twice before and after, and I went home empty-handed. At the end of last year, I went out with my wallet bulging. A group of dudes in the capital got along very well, calling them brothers and sisters, and became regulars at Chengpu restaurant. Most of the friends they met were the sons of officials who said they could bring their brothers to make a lot of money as soon as they met. Zhang Tu turned his head and glanced at Lu Kai-sang, and joked, "You are young and your cultivation is going well, so why frown?" Lu Kai-sang said softly, "I always feel that the storm is about to come, but I can't plan for it." Zhang Tu nodded in admiration and said, "If you can think that way, it means that you have truly accomplished Taoism." Lu Kai-sang grinned. Zhang Tu suddenly asked, "Why don't you come to our Langhuan faction to be a guest minister?" Lu Kai-sang twitched the corners of his mouth and was about to refuse when someone patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "I think Mr. Zhang's proposal is very good, and you can agree." Oriole Island. The blue sky is like training, and the light shakes the Big Dipper. An old man in Taoist attire, leaning on the railing after fasting, the view of the lake and the mountains is in sight. The golden light is shining, but it is not the vision brought by the robe on his body, but the reason for the flow of Taoism all over his body. The air around the old man moved slightly, and a person appeared out of thin air. This person ignored the restrictions on the mountains and rivers of the island and reached out to rub the jasper railing. The old man didn't turn his head, and sneered, "Lu Zhenjuan, a rare guest." Lu Zhimao clasped his fists and said with a smile, "Forgive your sins and forgive your sins. You came uninvited and disturbed Taoist Ziyang's purification." In the early years, Qingsha Island and Oriole Island were not very good at dealing with each other. One was called the true monarch Zhejiang, who was proficient in the water method, and the other was called Ziyang Zhenren, who practiced the fire method. Zhong Su twitched the corners of his mouth, "Lu Zhenjuan just knows. The color of the oriole is already cute, and it makes 3 or 5 sounds at the bottom of the leaves." Lu Zhimao patted the railing lightly and said softly, "It's really a good place, it's both eye-catching and ear-raising, the former is easy and the latter is difficult, so I wanted to annex Oriole Island back then, just because of the popularity of Ziyang. The law is superb, although there is a chance of victory, it is a tragic victory. I really don't want you and me to compete with snipe and mussels and be benefited by the fishermen of Gonglu Island." Zhong Su said with a smile, "Mr. Wu of the Shuijun mansion only left on the front foot, and Lu Zhenjuan came on the back foot. Why, did he get Lu Leicheng's advice to let the Zhenjuan beat me here?" Shujian Lake's first Hujun, Xia Fan, a ghost, was born in the battlefield, and was once a scout of the Dali frontier army. And Wu Guanqi, the mastermind of the Hujun Shuifu, was most likely born as a spy of the Great Li. On the side of Oriole Island, Wu Guanqi was a guest on the island. This person was full of praise for Lv Kaisang. In his words, he suggested that Zhong Su, a senior brother, might as well plan a new path for the younger brother in the long run. On the other side of Gumming Island, Hujun Xia Fan personally came to the door. There were also some visits in the first month of the month. The chief officials of the Waterhouse did not deliberately hide their whereabouts. Lu Zhimao laughed and said, "Brother Zhongsu, since we are both treated as dogs, why do dogs bite dogs?" Zhongsu is an outlier from Shujian Lake, the least like Shanzi Yeshio, who is extremely elegant. When blocking Lu Zimeo's unification of Jinhu, Oriole Island contributed a lot, but it was not a dispute of interests. Zhongsu was purely a sly dogu who couldn't understand Lu Zhimao, and his methods were too inferior. In Zongsu's words, even throwing a dog and sitting on that chair is better than Lu Zhimao being the co-owner of the book and Jane Lake. Lu Zhimao asked with a smile, after so many years, you still insist that Yeshio Yamazawa is also a chi practitioner, Zhongsu. Tell me, what do you think? This old friend, Zhongsu, was born in a serious family cultivator, but all his life he has always wanted to be a wild cultivator. Zhongsu was a native of Shujian Lake, but he always wanted to be a disciplined loose cultivator. A friend for many years, a nemesis, are so inexplicable. Gonglu Island. A genealogy monk's monastic career is not without schoolwork. Even the more genius, the more the elders of the division open small stoves. Guochuanshi belongs to the kind of a strange person who has very poor qualifications but has a lot of small kitchens. This is due to the fact that Guochuanshi is a direct disciple of Li Fuchuan, the second seat of the True Realms sect, but apart from this prominent status, he has nothing to praise: qualifications, family background, appearance, conversation. In Gonglu Island, where immortal masters gather, it's nothing. As for why Guochuanshi was so highly valued by Li Fuchuan, there was a lot of private speculation among colleagues. It was said that he came from a small country in the southeast of Aquarius. He used to study martial arts. There was a fairy mansion near his hometown, which seemed to be sent by Qingji. Anyway, it is a small door, a shabby sect that ordinary people have never heard of. It's just that he got into Li Fuchuan's eyes for some reason, and was regarded as a direct descendant. He is a lot of years old, in his 30s, but now he is a 2-level chi practitioner, but Li Fuchuan seems to still value this person very much. Not only personally he taught Taoism, and also gave Guochuanshi a magic weapon for absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The rest of the disciples were already direct disciples of the 5 monks. Zun's decision: usually when he sees Guochuanshi, he will always have a smile on his face and call out to junior brother Gua, a little bit of flattery when he gets close. Every once in a while, the Qingji faction will hold a mirror flower water moon, mostly in the high-rise pavilion by the cliff. Guochuanshi is bound to never fall, not to worry about his heart, or even more worried. After going up the mountain to practice immortality, it is said that the cultivator has a shallow relationship, but he has a deep relationship with the mountains and rivers, but he still regularly sends a letter to his parents and tells his parents about getting along well in a foreign country. After talking, send a letter to the martial arts hall, and chat with Master Su Yuanxia about the local customs on the mountain. After practicing, Guochuanshi stopped drinking. At first, he stopped drinking completely. He didn't drink a drop of alcohol for several months. Later, after watching a mirror, he stopped drinking almost every day. Guochuanshi is not interested in learning about the things on the mountain outside. Just the practice, daily schoolwork, breathing are enough to make Guochuanshi feel suffocated. Older people have achieved something in their studies and enjoy it, like a fish in water, but he can't. Cultivation is a real hard task, boring and slow. Usually, when master opens a class to teach, Li Fuchuo casually said a few words of Taoism, and then explained a few words, so that the brothers and sisters could understand by analogy, only he could hear it like a cloud. Just talking about contemplating the orientation of the caves in the small world, Guochuanshi is going to be blinded, and there are always many deviations, but not to mention the monks of the same generation. Even for those monks and nephews, this kind of thing is as simple as eat and drink water. Master's eldest disciple is an old land immortal in the Golden Core realm. This senior brother has several direct disciples, and he has more than a dozen other disciples. In the end, these geniuses of Taoism had to call out to the uncle of Guochuanshi, who was a cultivator of the second realm. Guochuanshi was thin-skinned at first, and would like to dig a hole and dig in, but over time, he will become numb, and it's good to get used to it. From the beginning with red face and red ears, humming, and then walking incessantly, just nodding and greeting. The Zhou brother who had met him at the martial arts hall at first sight, once gave him a very light robe, green earth, woven mountains and rivers and clouds. If it wasn't for the help of this robe to absorb the spiritual energy, it is estimated that Uncle Guishizu is now a spiritual practitioner. Guichuanshi is not smart, but he is not a fool. Knowing that he has such a good fortune, it is all thanks to this brother Zhou, who claimed to have also suffered from love and was the same as him. It's just that Guichuanshi underestimated the significance of that robe. This is a robe from Casefang, one of the 18 scenic spots in the blessed land of the Yunku Grottos, with fairy Keisai and spring water cloud patterns. It is very famous on Tonggishao Mountain. There should be a magic weapon rank. He showed Zhou Fei the immortal family's blindfolding technique, and suppressed the robe's unique ability to pass through the warp and cut the weft, otherwise Guichuanshi would not be able to wear it. Once Zhou Fei removed the technique, the Qingji faction's current landscape aura, if the Ancestor Hall formation could not stop it, would lose half of it at once, and the aura would be extracted by the robe and merged into those warp threads. Li Fuchuan couldn't help but don't care, not to seriously teach Taoism with Guichuanshi, even if he knew it was a waste of both parties' time. Li Fuchuan didn't dare to neglect in the slightest. After all, this disciple was Jiang Shangzhen's favorite student who recommended to her. As for the robe that Guichuanshi is wearing now, even an old yuaning like Li Fuchuan would be jealous. It is truly worth the price. From the engraving workshop in the blessed land of the Cloud Cave, the fairy Keisai, the spring water cloud pattern, the first-class magic weapon, both offense and defense, if it hadn't been for Jiang Shangzhen's manipulation of the robe, with Guichunx's shallow Taoism, he would not be able to wear it at all. This robe can actively absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the speed is equivalent to the retreat of an earth immortal. Guichuanshi just didn't have enough houses to open. When the realm improved, the disciple would understand the rarity of the robe more and more. In fact, it is not Guichuanshi who is refining his qi, but the robe that is helping him to temper his physique and moisturize the soul. But in Gonglu Island, or in other words the entire True Realm sect, the most special cultivator was a young female cultivator, none of whom was named Zhou Caizhen. In the moonlight, the girl walked alone on the shore, holding a broken willow in her hand and waving it gently. On the island, I am afraid that she is the only one who dares to break the willow without worrying about any punishment. She stopped because not far from the road, stood a young monk with a mild temperament, looking at herself with a smile. Zhou Caizhen hesitated for a while, but was still going to take a detour and pass the cultivator with an unfamiliar face. He had already said, "Your name is Zhou Caizhen, right?" Zhou Caizhen nodded and asked suspiciously, "Are you looking for me?" The young man shook his head and said, "It's okay, I'm just here to see you." Zhou Caizhen stopped. "Who are you?" The young man asked with a smile, "Did you bully you on the Shujian Lake side?" "Well, I mean that kind of gossip behind your back and chewing your tongue. No one would dare to say anything nasty to you in person." Zhou Caizhen laughed dumbly and shook his head. The young man smiled and said, "Why don't you think about it again?" Zhou Caizhen didn't know whether to laugh or cry, really not. Which True Realm sect cultivator is such a lame approach? Seeing that the young man didn't move, Zhou Caizhen joked, "What would you do if we were Sect Master Lu?" The young man's eyes were clear and he said with a smile, "Then within 100 years, the old and new accounts will be calculated together. Find an excuse, and I will help you kill him." Zhou Caizhen was instantly horrified and took a step back subconsciously. Because intuition told her that this seemingly modest young man in front of her was definitely not joking. In a hidden dojo of the True Realm sect, Lu Laoqing was sitting opposite a female cultivator in Beidasheng who claimed to be Han Chaose. Outside the door, there was a young woman with a savage demon clan aura, claiming to be Gu Kangang's entourage, and she had to work for him for 100 years. On the shore, the young cultivator who stopped Zhou Caizhen on his way said, "Hello, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Gu Kan, I come from Lishudong Tian Huiwang County, and I live with that person in Mupin Alley. The capital of Yushuan Kingdom, Yongjia County, is a dark alley full of chicken and dog dung. The young Taoist found a teenager who had been to the Changning County government office. A Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown stood outside the door, muttering to himself, saying that he had finally found you. But the Taoist priest was not happy. An old man was sleeping soundly in the house, occasionally coughing a few times unconsciously. The young man lit the lamp and boiled medicine in the kitchen. His movements were very light, and his face was full of haze, which made the thin young man even more miserable, but whenever he was in a very bad mood, he would have no reason to think of Wu Daichang's words. The young man would involuntarily smile a little, thinking in his heart that it would be great if he could become a Taoist priest in the future. Lu Chen's out-of-body spirit quietly set up a large formation here, causing headaches. It's not that he didn't report the time and didn't arrive. Did he really have debts to pay off? At the top of Splashing Ink Peak, Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji came together with Yu Feng. Since the two princes did not carry the three-way jade seal, they couldn't agree without a few words. Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, "Qing Qian, do you really want to burn all the jade and stones? Qingxing Kingdom and you are on the Green Peak, aren't you afraid that one will break the country and one will break the incense? Don't give your face shame." The old man who looked like a teenager shook his sleeves and said with a smile, "It's just a Huan mountain. It can't be said that all the jade and stones are burnt. If you die, you can just hit the stone with an egg, and wipe off some stains." In the hot spring of falling Yuanshan, Yu Yi, who was about to get married, and the mountain goddess, laughed and walked out of the water, arm in arm. They looked at each other, not embarrassed, but panicked. Who could sneak into this place without knowing it, and then steal those dresses just a few feet away from them? Palace Master Bai, who was wearing a crane cloak, was already in the Fanwan mansion. Even in a side hall, he couldn't go to the brightly lit main hall, and the seat of Bai Mao was still very much in the corner. Lu Amo left the town with the girl named Enai Qing. The woman Wu Fu was very worried, and the girl turned back 3 steps at a time. In an instant, the entire Huan mountain realm simultaneously sensed a majestic air machine that suddenly spread out, like a round of scorching sun slamming the ground, brittle as glass shattered and splattered. The momentum spread like a surging tide, but fortunately it was just a vision in an instant. Before all the Qi trainers, warriors, and ghosts could recover, the tide would flow back at a faster speed. At that time, after the Qingping sword sect ceremony, a group of people went out to travel in groups, and then parted ways on the Taiping mountainside, and one of them continued to travel south together. In the same vein of Wenxing, there are Li Baoping, Pei Qian, and Jing Yugan. A pair of nominal master and servant. Of course, the fat man Gu Su himself felt that he and Zhong Kuei were good brothers who shared weal and woe. There is also a little girl from Taishu Mountain. Her master is the fairyland with the Taoist name Dragon Gate. Sure enough, her patriarch is Taishishan Guaoding. Sure enough, he stayed in Taiping Mountain. He had nothing to worry about. His disciple Tan Ningzhou followed them, and there would be no accident. Not to mention traveling to Tongya continent, even if it is Middle-earth divine continent, that group of people can have no taboos. A ferry called Kaiyun passed by a rainy ferry house. Because the ferry would pass through the rain, almost all the passengers walked out of the cabins. On the bow side, came a suave young monk. A noble family, with a small bronze mirror hanging on his waist, a white jade crown, wide sleeves and a belt. While walking, there is a sense of wind and water on the jacket. He and Pei Qian first slapped a formula to perform a unique ceremony, and then asked softly. Said, "Dare to ask Fairy Dao's teacher inheritance?" Pei Qian said indifferently, "I'm not a fairy, I'm a martial artist." There are often genealogy cultivators like the man in front of me, or children of wealthy clans who go out to play, and come to talk to Pei Qian more than 2 or 3 times. Li Baoping was lying on the railing, tilting his head, watching the play. Still not giving up, the man continued to ask, could the girl tell Fang's name? Seeing that Pei Qian didn't mean to speak, the man was not annoyed, smiled and said, my name is Chu Gao, my name is Fei Shuang, and my ancestral home is Cuibai County of the Dachong dynasty. I followed the master Limong up the mountain to cultivate and stayed in Qizifang for nearly 40 years, just because my talent is dull and my roots are mediocre. My teacher is worried that I will leave Qizifang, so I rarely go out to practice. Yomazawa Yeshio, the Taoist name is arbitrary, it is worthless at all, but whether a genealogy cultivator is qualified to have a Taoist number, but it is a huge watershed, just like a businessman from a country, in the capital of an inch of land and an inch of gold. Do you have the financial resources? It's almost like buying a big house. Not far away, the fat man Gu Su was amazed and said with a heartfelt smile, Brother Zhong, listen, a few words reveal so much key information. If this guy rarely goes down the mountain to experience, I will eat shit. From now on, I will pack the dung buckets of this ferry. Zhong Kuei said with a smile, the ferry side may not dare to agree to your request. One of the reasons why they don't like to accept ordinary masters and pure warriors on board is one of the more difficult reasons for this group of people, who have food and drink and Lazarus. It has to be solved. You may stay on the ferry for a long time, so if you are doing chores on the ferry, it's fine. It was cleaning the latrine, which was filthy and smelly, and they naturally disliked it very much. Chu Gao has a Taoist name, which means that he is at least a Qi cultivator in the cave state. The surname is Chu, and he was born in Cuibai County of the Dachong dynasty, and the Cuibai Chu family is a famous local county Wanghao clan in Daizong Dingding. In addition, the Yundingshan Leiqi School is also the largest immortal mansion in the Dachong dynasty, compared with only 2 people. The Qingzhuan faction of Jindan Patriarch is going to win. The peak master with the Taoist name Limong, although not the head, is an old patriarch of nascent soul. Because he participated in that war, he has a small amount of military exploits. Therefore, he is highly respected, and is regarded as an old immortal who can count the reputation and realm of Tong Yizhou today. Pei Qian smiled politely and said, I have heard for a long time about the names of Yunding Mountain Leiqi Xianfu and Feijingfang's true monarch Limong. Chu Gao said, to be honest, I went out to the mountains to practice this time, and I followed the teacher's order and went out to collect the Leihan heavenly books born in various places, because the master recently wanted to add a Lei Fa Tao for the Dachong dynasty. Books. Then I heard that the Lan Rao country is not too far from here, there are monsters, and the morality is not low. As a result, the land of the 2 states has been dry for 3 or 4 months from the end of last year to the spring of this year. When the weather was abnormal, the Longlu Kingdom's court and the Qin Tianjin still didn't know the reason. It was a friend of mine who was on the mountain over there. When I went to investigate at risk, I found that a monster dared to occupy the gate of an abandoned old state city temple, deliberately. I pretend to be a dragon thing and deceive people, so I want to subdue it with a few friends and capture it back to the mountain. To say that in Tong Yizhou a few decades ago, a genealogical cultivator like Chu Gao had a master in the nascent soul realm. There are more than 20 direct disciples of the master, Chu Gao is only one of them, not to mention that Yunding Mountain is in the Dachong dynasty, and he is not the one who holds the bull's ear in the immortal mansion on the mountain. It's different now, let alone the Dachong dynasty, even if he goes to the south of Tongya continent, as long as Chu Gao shows his division, he must be the guest of honor of the emperors and generals of various countries, and he will only try his best to flatter him. Pei Qian nodded sternly. It is obvious that he is implying the other party. Now that you have finished speaking, you can go. Gu Su said, If I were a fledgling female cultivator on the mountain with slightly shallower eyelids, I would definitely be willing to take the initiative to undress and untie for young Master Chu. Zhong Kuei teased, just like your little 300 caddies of fat, how hungry does young Master Chu have to choose what to eat to be attractive? Zhong Kuei then said with a smile, these little tricks are all the rest of the way in the market, and it's okay to deceive those young fairies who are not deep in the world. In the words of Pei Qian, when I was a child, they are bagasses that dogs don't even eat. Playing these tricks with Pei Qian, this young Master Chu is considered blind, and encountering Pei Qian is like a little liar encountering his own ancestor. Gu Su said cautiously, is Pei Qian so powerful? Zhong Kuei smiled and said, if you are like me, you have seen Pei Qian when you were young, go to the next time in Qingping Sword Sect, you absolutely dare not take it lightly. Fatty complained, didn't you tell me earlier? Zhong Kuei said, what should I say earlier? I know Pei Qian earlier than I know you. Am I stupid and turn my elbows out? The fat man stretched out his hand and lightly beat his chest, and said in pain, the Brotherhood of Iron is so worthless. It's so angry. Zhong Kuei frowned and said, it's strange, how can Lao Shangguan teach such an out-of-tune and romantic disciple? Isn't he afraid that he won't be safe in the evening? He'll have to ask later. The cultivators of the Leiqi sect were probably due to their compatibility with the practice of Lei Fa. Most of them had strong personalities and extremely hard bones. In the war that year, one of the group of ancestors, under the leadership of the palace master, and the one who was later known as the young generals of the Pillar Stone of the clan dynasty gathered their troops and horses together, and fought and retreated, and when there was a chance, they went to harass the wild demon clan, and made a lot of contributions. However, after the success, the entire Fijing Feng and the cultivators of the Lei Qin school patriarch hall did not take credit, and even deliberately concealed this deed. There was just a gossip circulating on the mountain, that Shangguan Lao claimed that Laozi was helping General Huang, just such a soldier, not to help the royal family of Yu who ran faster than a rabbit when they saw that the situation was not good. Tan Ningzhou said in a heartfelt voice, go on again, Yu's senior sister Pei, has a very good temper. Leave me alone, being beaten so stubbornly by an embroidered pillow, I punched it long ago and smashed it on the other side's door, but I didn't see him. With blood all over your face, you will never stop punching. Jing Yuqian was actually strange. He always felt that this senior sister Pei couldn't match the Jing Qian he imagined. Especially after these days of getting along, Jing Yugan found out that although senior sister Pei doesn't talk much, she often has a smiling face and is very friendly, not vicious at all. Instead, she is like the kind of woman who came from a family of hairpins, who is knowledgeable, sensible, virtuous and gentle, and has a great family education. Tan Ningzhou has an even more strange thing. I can't figure it out. If you talk about her appearance, it must be that Sister Aquarius is more beautiful. Why are those men running for Pei Qian? I asked Jing Yugan if he knew the reason. Jing Hegan hesitated for a long time, obviously knowing the answer, but it is not appropriate to speak. After all, they are all senior sisters. Talking about this, there are no rules and no manners. Tan Ningzhou said angrily, the law does not pass on the 6 years, what are you worried about? Do you think I am a millet grain, so I like to be an ear to repay the god? Jing Yuqian then said cautiously, Senior Sister Li is so good-looking, most men don't think it's any use to strike up a conversation, so they simply don't make fun of themselves. Senior Sister Pei is naturally good-looking, but she is not as good-looking as Senior Sister Li. Senior Sister is almost inseparable every day, and every time they show up, they stand together, and a man with a vivacious mind like Chu Gao can't control Wawa's intestines. Tan Ningzhou sneered, you know that. After the little girl said this, Jing Yugan didn't dare to say the second reason, he swallowed and hid it well. There are also some men, maybe because the drunkard's intention is not drinking, they want to get to know senior sister Pei first, and then get to know senior sisterly. Alas, these prodigal sons with bad hearts have really read the book of sages in vain. The little uncle is still a powerful, unpredictable prophet, and he has secretly let himself remember all the way through the mountains and rivers, especially the names of the disciples and the gates of the mountains. Tan Ningzhou asked, "Your little uncle never sent you a secret letter or anything?" Jing Yugan shook his head, very frankly, and said no. Little martial uncle is very busy, and he is doing big things. In addition, little martial uncle is not the kind of elder who likes to boast. Even if he has asked someone about the sword recently, he will not tell him. Tan Ningzhou looked at him with a look of pity. "Do it again. I think Lord Yingguan thinks that you are worthless and don't bother to pay attention to you." Jing Yugan grinned and said, "I'm not very promising, but little uncle is not such a person." Tan Ningzhou said in a complex tone that was both regretful and fascinated, "I heard a friend on the mountain say that in addition to slashing people, Lord Yingguan is just as powerful as scolding people. The uncle is true, but it is false that Lord Yingguan has a nephew like you." Jing hesitated for a while. He had just learned from the past, so he didn't dare to say anything more. Don't look at the quarrels of the little uncle, because he was a young hidden official in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and later participated in the discussion in the Confucian Temple where the two worlds confronted each other. Fei Jian, but senior brother Cui told Jing Yugan in private that, in fact, your little uncle's ability to quarrel may not be able to rank in the top 10 in your hometown. Zhong Kui asked Fatty to commit crimes and help Pei Qian out of the siege. Gusu claimed to be her distant uncle and shouted again, telling Chu Gao's little to get out of the way. Returning to Zhong Kui's side, the fat man smiled and said, "How?" Zhong Kui looked at the fat man pitifully. It was true that he remembered small merits, but it was true that he was held grudges. If you were Pei Qian's uncle, wouldn't you be the same generation as her master? Pei Qian and his party came to Li Baoping's house, and the table was still piled with a large number of different types of mortise and tenon, all kinds of mortise and tenon as small as fingernails, even as small as tassel, and a small wooden box is filled with planers, hammers of different specifications, which makes Li Baoping like a carpenter and a mechanic. There are several samples that have not yet been really finalized, and are roughly similar in shape to wooden kites. In addition to these, there is also a heavy booklet full of terms that Li Baoping researched by himself. Jing Yugan had seen the scene in front of her many times, so she couldn't understand it. Senior sister Aquarius fiddled with these ingenious objects every day. What did she want to do every day? Seeing their curiosity, Li Baoping smiled and said, "Suddenly there is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and there are cultivators in the world. Then, if one day the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly disappears, what will the Qi cultivators do? How can they control the wind? How can they enter the water?" Tan Ningzhou blurted out, "How is that possible?" Li Baoping smiled, "So it's a hypothesis." Pei Qian said with a smile, Sister Aquarius still had an assumption that a large group of Qi practitioners were suddenly thrown into a place of nowhere. This place, the territory of mountains and rivers, is equivalent to the old Dali, with a population of over 100 million, and they have never seen it. The realm of these foreign monks is not high, and there are no monks in the middle 5 realms, so every time they fight, they need to consume the aura they have saved, and the aura recovered through their own secret methods and magic weapons is definitely not comparable. The total amount lost will not be able to make ends meet, so every time you make a move, no matter what the purpose is, you have to be cautious and cautious. Generally speaking, the 3 kinds of immortal coins, gold, silver and copper coins, together with mineral reserves, can be roughly estimated. There may be 2 gaps on the side of the Confucian Temple or on the secret file of Liu's in the Snow Island. Too large a number, only the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is destined to be unquantifiable. Fortunately, there is a cave between heaven and earth, and a great monk can also create a small world. Li Baoping fiddled with the mortise and tenon on the table, and said to himself, there are several key points in this structural model. First of all, it is assumed that the sum of the aura of all qi practitioners in the lower 5 realms is equivalent to that of a Jindan earth immortal. The total amount of aura. Second, because there is no additional aura, and this world is closed, the rule that 1 + 1 = 2 in arithmetic is strictly followed. Therefore, monks refining qi, drawing talismans, alchemy and other weird things, it means that they are all abandoned. Third, there must be several references that tend to be eternal in a narrow sense, orientation, weight, length, etc. They must be as stable and constant as possible. Fourth, the inner workings of the whole world, several underlying computing methods are required, as the basis for the expansion or contraction of a small but complete world. To be precise, it is the connection between people, objects, heaven and earth, and some kind of feedback. Is it a compensation mechanism or a random pattern, or a combination of the two? It needs to be carefully weighed. If the context is unclear, the avenue will not be obvious, whether it is circular or linear, whether it will eventually converge to equivalent, or use disorder as the only order, or between the virtual and the real there is a certain loss value for the transformation, and the calculation method must embed this or more. Li Baoping was stunned when he heard Jing Yu gone. The little girl yawned and felt a little sleepy. Alas, it was obscure and could not understand. Only Pei Qian listened very seriously. Li Baoping immediately stopped talking and said with a smile, if you don't talk about this, it's an unrealistic fantasy anyway. If she continues to talk, it will be more complicated, involving ropes and knots, such as the Taoist lineage of qi practitioners on the mountain, a certain suzerain of Confucianism and a certain backward, entrusted gentleman. For friends, each has friends, money exchanges, past conversations, words, who remembers whose heart and mind. If we only talk about money, we can distinguish between false and true, and the money and goods in business transactions are true. Void. In addition to the red line of marriage, the genealogy of the patriarch's hall on the mountain, the genealogy of the ancestral hall below the mountain. It is like a tree, and it grows on the edge of a calm lake like a mirror. It can be the real world, the underwater is an illusory world, but it can also be viewed upside down, and the trunk of this tree, branches, green leaves, blossoms, and as a result, can be like a human body, with fallen leaves and disappear without a trace. When it turns into soil or water, dead branches will fall to the ground and become rotten, just like the words and deeds of people, such as autumn leaves and dead branches gradually dissipating in the heaven and earth, and there will be no traces, and some seeds will fall to the ground and take root. It keeps spreading. Those flourishing branches can be, but are not limited to a line of ideas, or context, every gradually formed cognition and idea, whether someone is good or bad, can be a leaf, a flower, people experience cold and warm, fragrant, sweet and sour, feel the beauty and ugliness of others. Every mature and fixed life experience is a fruit that does not fall, hangs on the tree for a long time, and misses someone for a long time. Individuals can also be, but whenever someone is forgotten, or a certain truth is changed, they will quietly fall to the ground and disappear. And the fundamental truths in my heart are the branches, but the branches can also be the 4 seasons of the year, the 24 solar terms, and the 72 seasons, which are just branches. In short, Li Baoping is still classified, there is no conclusion for the time being, like silently compiling a series of books that have never been seen before and never come after. So Tan Ningzhou privately sighed with Jing Yuqian, what is this Sister Aquarius thinking about every day? Jing just wanted to stop talking. Only Pei Qian, every time Sister Aquarius raised her eyebrows and talked about this, she would listen carefully. After all, the first time when I was a child, I was willing to bow down to the enemy. It was when Pei Qian saw a book mountain in the Li Baoping Academy in Dasui Shanaya Academy. Before that, Pei Qian felt that copying books had become a thing of the past, but as soon as she entered the door, Xiao Haiten immediately lost the will to win. After Tan Yingzhou and Jing Yugan left the house, Pei Qian stayed in the house, hesitating and hesitating. Li Baoping smiled and said, "What do you want to ask?" Pei Qian Yen said, "Sister Baoping, there is still half a year before the debate between the three religions. Do you need to open a small stove?" The difference between this three-religion debate and any previous debate is that this time the three religions, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism, each sent 9 people. In fact, there is no requirement for the number of people. On the Confucian side, there is the Chang Yuanzhang of the Henku Academy in the Middle Earth, Li Baoping from Beiping's Cliff Academy and others participate in the three teachings debate. It's really something that Pei Qian can't think of. Pei Qian believes that he can fight, and he can also scold others. As for this kind of debate, forget it. Li Baoping smiled and said, "There is no need to open a small stove, and there is no way to open a small stove." Seeing that Pei Qian didn't understand, Li Baoping explained patiently, "It's not something that is scripted, it's more about playing it on the spot. Otherwise, if you go there, the endorsement is normal, and the people who are debating and listening are all smart people. If you show your feet, you will lose face when you lose face." Pei Qian was very curious about the matter, so he asked in a low voice, "Sister Baoping, won't you be nervous?" Li Baoping was stunned. "Huh? What are you nervous about?" Little Shishu and Shizu didn't ask themselves to quarrel and win. Besides, don't you have a big brother who is very good at reading? Seeing Pei Qian's stunned expression, Li Baoping twisted his wrist to reveal an extra jug. He laughed and said, "I'm nervous. How can I not be nervous? I have to drink a drink to suppress my shock." Pei Qian was a little helpless. Li Baoping said with a smile, "Actually, the first and last speeches, the first and the last, are the only two that may be a little nervous. After all, everyone who is on the sidelines will pay special attention. Of course, there are also easy ways. Just talk to yourself, no matter what other people say, type your draft, memorize it by rote, stand up, finish talking, sit down, and you'll be fine." Pei Qian asked, "Sister Aquarius, have you come up with a general strategy?" Li Baoping put his arms around his chest and leaned on the back of the chair, with a radiant expression and a grin, acting on a whim. "Generally there is only one purpose. If possible, I can say as much as I can, and strive to give all the people who are listening to it. I'm tired of talking, I'm talking about me, you should drink and eat." Back then, I listened to the master's ramble at Shanaya Academy and repeated some Karen real words. This time I have to make up for it. Pei Qian is very sure that Sister Aquarius is not joking, it is an extremely serious idea. If I were to be spectators of the debate of the three religions who were either in the 14th realm or the Ascension realm, they knew that they would blame the teachers and teachers of the Beiping's Cliff Academy. Li Baoping asked, "Pei Qian, during this period of time, I didn't see how you drink." Pei Qian said embarrassedly, "I didn't like to drink at all, but the master came back." Li Baoping lowered his voice and said, "Has Big White Goose made a plan with you?" Pei Qian wondered, what did the little brother say? Li Baoping said, "The Big White Goose is now looking forward to the close disciple of the younger uncle. It may be a junior sister, of course, it is better to be a junior. The Big White Goose said that if the junior uncle helped him find a junior, it would be fun." Pei Qian wrote it down silently. Respect for the old and love for the young in the line of Wen Xing is very traditional. Apart from the old Ziyakai's protection, as a dog-headed military strategist who is in the line of Wen Xing said, it is almost like an old hen protecting her chicks. Another example is the obedience of the left and right to his husband, and Chen Ping's warm greetings to his husband, absolutely nothing to say. Whether it is for Chao Qingqing, Pei Qian and other nephews, or Chen Pingan for Jing Yugan, they are all obvious protections. But to talk about the friendship between peers, hee. At that time, I was with Qi Jingchen, and later Cui Yu and Chen Pingan. Li Baoping and Cui Dongshan, Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing. Therefore, the big white goose on Li Baoping's side is very righteous and confident, and we call it inheriting the tradition and carrying it forward. The younger brother and sister are not used to bully. How can our husband and master, your little uncle Aquarius, have the opportunity to show the love and protection of the close disciple? Afterwards, the group encountered a mysterious cave house with overlapping landscape restrictions, which Pei Qian had inadvertently spotted on the ferry before. Fatty got excited when he heard it. He had to take a look. What if there is an affair? Just like Goose Su's appearance, this temperament, this conversation. Zhong Kuei didn't think the problem was a big deal, so he just treated it as a tour of the mountains and water, visiting immortals and exploring seclusion. After Fatty Yujin, a coolie ghost, broke through the restrictions one by one, it was faintly visible, and there was an ancient temple deep in the hazy mist, which seemed to be an abandoned dojo. Fatty shrank his head and said in a low voice, "Brother Zhong, we won't run into the fierce ghosts, right? You know, I'm timid, and I'm most afraid of this." Zhong Kuei smiled and said, "Are you afraid of running into a ghost, or afraid of not seeing a ghost?" The fat man answered the question, "I have a pure heart and few desires, and cultivate one's self-cultivation. I still feel a little lack of meaning." Zhong Kuei has been with this fat man for a long time, and naturally he can hear his meaning. If there are ghosts in the way, they will come to my uncle Gu Su, and just show 18 martial arts to test my Taoism and determination. Zhong Kuei frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "It's obviously not a filthy place. Why is the evil spirit so heavy? It's already equivalent to an ancient battlefield where tens of thousands of Yin soldiers gather. It wouldn't matter if he and Fatty were the only ones hanging around here, but now he's following the younger generation like Li Baoping. Forget it." Thinking of Pei Qian, Zhong Kuei just reminded them to be careful and don't take 3 steps away from each other the distance, especially telling Tan Yingzhou and Jing Yugan, the 2 lowest level children, at the same time let the fat man remember to protect these 2, and don't think about the mountain and wild encounters. The fat man nodded and sniffed again. "It's like a fish in water, happy and happy." Suddenly, a deep voice sounded in the mountains. The sound was like thunder, and it swirled in everyone's ears. "Quickly exit, this place is dangerous, it is not suitable to stay for a long time." Fatty looked around and snorted, "Brother Zhong, this fellow is a bit sane, even I can't detect the source of the sound." From Brother Zhong's point of view, is it a man or a ghost, an enemy or a friend? Zhong Kuei hesitated for a while, but he was cautious, turned his head and said, "Aquarius, Pei Qian, stay with Eugene and leave here with Jing Yugan and Tan Yingzhou." The fat man stomped his feet and said, "Why?" Zhong Kuei patted the fat man on the shoulder. The fat man shrank his neck. "All right." The pavilions and pavilions, the paper windows are gradually full of moonlight, the shadows are splendid, the small garden has a winding path, the roadside is full of flowers, and there are faintly palace-dressed women, gently moving the cicadas on the temples. Another woman's voice sounded charmingly, "What are you going to do? Since you have already come, why not stay together?" As soon as the fat man heard this voice, his bones were brittle, he snorted a few times, and said solemnly, "Brother Zhong, you should them away in person, I'm not leaving today anyway. Longtan Tiger Cave is going to have a walk, too. Even if I risk my life, I will help the Academy to determine the identity and roots of this kind of evil spirit. If it is the kind of evil people who can't hide from the world, how can I go through all the plans here? Passing by, how can you just sit back and watch?" Pei Qian just turned his head to look at one place. The distance seemed to be very close, just a few feet away on the right-hand side. Pei Qian shifted his sight again and switched to the northwest direction, but this time his sight was even closer, as if the other party was close at hand. When Pei Qian shifted his gaze for the third time, he looked far away. Fatty was very surprised. What is the origin of this Pei Qian? Why didn't he know that a martial artist of the limit, he had such a unique magical power that seemed to open the eyes of the sky? Zhong Kuei asked in his heart, "Have you found the other party's trace?" Pei Qian replied in a heartfelt voice, "I found it, but the second and third time, I deliberately looked in the wrong direction. As for this little trick, I don't know if I can deceive the other party." Zhong Kuei reached out and rubbed his eyebrows. As expected of the little black charcoal who was able to deceive the few fast-moving hunters when they were young. Zhong Kuei looked up attentively. All the blinding methods dissipated on their own, and there was no more pavilions and pavilions, only a small hillside, with an ancient monument standing on it, with the characters on the ground and the characters on the list. In the middle of the ancient monument, there is still a vertical line of ancient seal characters, which cannot be turned over forever. On the top of the ancient monument, a rusted copper coin sword seemed to be placed at random. In this ancient site, all the evil spirits came from the hillside, but it was suppressed by ancient monuments and copper coins. Then Zhong Kuei shook his head. The place was actually occupied by two young cultivators, who were deliberately scaring people here. One of the young men seemed to be a sword cultivator. At this moment, they were hiding behind the stone tablet, and they seemed to be more nervous. One man and one woman are not of high realm, they have not yet formed elixir, and they are not from a demon race. It's just that there are already signs of being infested with evil spirits. To put it simply, if they stay here for a long time, they will be reincarnated by the strange one suppressed by stone tablets and copper coins. Zhong Kuei suddenly sensed something was wrong. A wry smile for a while. What Feijin, is it so incredible? However, they may have made a mistake by chance, or they may have been used as puppets. They seem to have mastered the center of the formation of this site. It turned out that Zhong Kuei seemed to be returning to the inn in Hure town. The proprietress was sitting behind the counter, smiling like a flower. The most terrifying thing was that at a wine table, the academy gentleman was waving at him, motioning for Zhong Kuei to sit down and drink. No matter how Zhong Kuei casts his spells, the whole person is like being imprisoned on the back of a mirror. At the same time, Eugene was sweating profusely, and on the other side of the hill, there was that. Wen Hai is very careful. Eugene took courage, and towards that must be an illusion, Show Me, performed a forceful attacking technique to press the bottom of the box. Zhou Mi smiled lightly, just stretched out his hand, and with such a light touch, he knocked a ghost fairy to the ground. Unable to move, the voice above his head was like thunder. Eugene, if success is not enough, there is more than failure. What's the use of leaving you? Pei Qian stood there, sweating profusely, her eyes widened. In the darkness of the night, a thin figure eating a steamed bun slowly turned his head and looked at a yellow-faced and thin child. Jing Yugan was in a trance, as if he had turned into a demon clan, surrounded by people of the same kind. He looked up and saw a tall city with flying swords falling like rain, smashing at him. Tan Ningzhou was also in a similar state. Only Li Baoping raised the back of her hand and tapped her forehead lightly. She quickly regained her sanity. After realizing something was wrong, she had a narrow knife in her hand. At this moment, there were ripples, and another, Zhong Kuei, stumbled out of a gate, scolding. It turned out that he just tried to enter the underworld and then return to the world, and he had to obediently take a trip to Huangquan Road, the gate of hell, and cross the floor. There was a lot of wind and lightning all the way through the gates, and he couldn't care about the etiquette and the rules. Zhong Kuei finally returned here. Anyway, on Fengde's side, this time he was destined to owe a lot of confusion. It's just that just as this Zhong Kuei told Li Baoping not to worry, he scolded his mother and fell into an illusion again. On the other side of the hillside, this time, Zhong Kuei gave a startling glance, but it was not an illusion, but a vague female figure, as if holding a bamboo basket in her hands. She stared at that Zhong Kuei in a daze, as if she was thinking of something, but it just happened. Can't remember, she sighed, turned around, looked at the stone tablet, stood on tiptoe, and tried to take the copper coin sword. It spread to the whole small world in an instant, but she did not shrink her hands, and her fingers gradually twisted the seemingly incomparable copper money sword. Zhong Kuei began to run again on the road of Yin and Ming, and the debt was too much, but this time he had to borrow a party of Fingdu heavy treasure to suppress his own Yin spirit as a ballast stone. Damn, there are some ridicule words along the way. Is Uncle Zhong taking a walk? Hey, isn't this brother Zhong Kuei? Are you addicted to visiting the gates of hell? When Zhong Kuei, who was wearing a bright red robe, hurried on his way, he half borrowed and grabbed a heavy treasure, held it high with one hand, and forcibly broke out of the dark path, and finally appeared beside Li Baoping again. However, he found that a man in a Confucian shirt appeared out of thin air on the top of the mountain. He raised one palm and condensed the sea of fire into a pure fireball. The blurred figure smiled and said, "Senior will be able to leave this place on his own soon, as short as half a year, or as long as a year." He stomped his feet lightly, and the ground turned into a dojo. Li Baoping put the knife into the sheath, shook the narrow knife, and shouted with a smile, "Brother." Li Shixing nodded with a smile. Li Baoping hurriedly said, "Do me a favor." Li Hisung waved his sleeves and everyone returned to normal. Li Baoping asked in a heartfelt voice, "Who is she?" Li Shixing actually already had a guess in his heart, but it was rare to lie on the side of the bottle once. Big brother doesn't know either. Zhong Kuei just wanted to ask this Confucian scholar, who can be called Tongxian, about the woman's origin. Li Shixing smiled and said, "My name is Li Shixing. I am the elder brother of Aquarius. I have heard Mr. Zhong's name for a long time." Zhong Kuei had already put away his robe, and then put Fang Zhongbao in his sleeve. Hearing the other party's self-reporting identity, he was a little embarrassed for a while, that little snow cone brush. Li Shixing smiled and said, "I really gave it to Master Qin in the early years, but it has nothing to do with me if Mr. Qin lent it to Mr. Zhong." Zhong Kuei and Li Shixing looked at each other, smiled, and bowed almost at the same time. Li Shixing looked at that Pei Qian with a gentle expression and said with a soft smile, "It's just a matter of fate, don't blame yourself, even if I don't take action, you will still be in danger. If you don't believe it, you can ask your master when you look back. See what he has to say." Eugene felt a bit guilty for the first time, and did not dare to see Zhong Kuei. Zhong Kuei patted his arm. He didn't blame him, but he didn't say anything to comfort him. He just joked, "Fatty, do you know what it means to share the happiness and the happiness?" The fat man raised his head and grinned. "A star in the sky." On the top of the strange mountain, a burly figure sat cross-legged, his hands clenched, his fists on his knees, and sneered. The content of the inscription is not small. A young cultivator stood beside him. It was the Mr. Sanshan Joho, who said indifferently, "It's not illegal to brag." "How is this account calculated?" "Calculate what you say." The burly man narrowed his eyes. "That's it." Mr. Sanshan Joho still said, "It's not illegal to brag." Everyone left the ruins, and Zhong Kuei took the pair of boys and girls by his side. Li Shixing then traveled with them to Tongyi's house, and Fatty didn't say a word of dirty words along the way. Then at a certain moment, Pei Qian heard a voice, and when the other party reported her identity, everyone noticed the strong murderous intention in her. Li Shixing thought for a while, but still didn't say anything. After that, Pei Qian said goodbye with a fist to everyone, and in a flash, he dissipated, left Tongya continent, and returned to Aquarius Continent. In the alley in Fengla town, Pei Qian instantly restrained his fists and walked into the yard. After Pei Qian greeted her master, she stared blankly at the Taoist priest. Then Pei Qian quickly returned to calm, his whole person, fist intent, and mind were as calm as water, without the slightest ripple. Lu Chen sighed, Wan Duzi, another confused old account. If Pei Qian appeared this time, she was aggressive, but she wouldn't be afraid. It would be best to ask a fist fight without saying a word, but with her appearance and state of mind, she was very intimidating. Chen Pingan stood up and said with a smile, It's been a long time since we walked the rivers and lakes together. Zhou Qiu stood there blankly. Chen Pingan introduced with a smile, Miss Zhou, her name is Pei Qian. Pei Qian grinned and said, I am Master's great disciple. Sort of Coming Chapter 10:18. Although Zhou Qiu already had guesses in his heart, his name was Pei Qian, a female martial artist, and his hair and bun clothes were all in line with those mysterious rumors. In addition, the appearance of the other party triggered a mysterious vision of heaven and earth, but it was really true. It was too unbelievable. Just talking about why Pei Qian appeared here made Zhou Qi puzzled and suppressed the turbulence in her heart. She couldn't help but ask, but Master Pei from Luopa Mountain. He used to be in the capital of Dali. On the battlefield, used the pseudonym Jingqian. Although in the Hehuan Mountains, due to his identity, Zhou Qiu's news is not well informed. The dozen or so Shanxue Di newspapers obtained through different channels have all been smashed, but the name of one of the four great masters of Aquarius Island. No. How could Zhou Qiu not know that the shadow of the famous Tree of People was in the battlefield of the capital, and on both sides of the strait, Xing Qingming killed demons and saved people, and he was like no one in the demon clan. Pei Qian clasped his fists and smiled, Sister Zhou, you can't afford to be a grandmaster. Zhou Qi turned his head to look at the boy with the sword on his back. If the woman in front of him was Pei Qian, who could be the person who was called master by Pei Qian? Before, I thought that this young man was quite kind-hearted. He was a good person, but he was a big talker, which was really unbearable. Now that I think about it, the other party is bragging about not making drafts and making sensational speeches. It is clearly aimed at it, but she and Bai Mao don't believe it. Because it was so close, Lu Tai had already heard the news. Zhou Qiu clasped his fists and said, Dallas Frontier Army, the cultivator of the Daliang camp under Su Zunch's command, Zhou Qiu, the captain of the upper cavalry, has met Mr. Qin. The man in armor said solemnly, Liang Tai, the scout leader of the Daliang camp, has seen Mr. Qin. Chen Pingan clenched his fists in return, Dali Luopao Mountain Chen Pingan, I have met Zhou Duwei and Lu Biaochang. Pei Qianshao was surprised and couldn't help but glance at Zhou Qi more. In the old system of the Dali Frontier Army, the captain of the upper cavalry belonged to the military commander's rank, the fourth rank, and did not belong to the actual position of the frontier army. However, if Zhou Qiu did not die in battle and became a ghost, and could leave the battlefield alive, according to the new law of Dali, he would get this a high-value martial arts. She was transferred to the local garrison, and she should have started as a real military attaché of the fifth rank. If she served in the military department of the Dali accompanying capital, Zhou Qi might be the chief officer of a certain department. Stepping back 10,000 steps, even if Zhou Qiu was already a heroic spirit, it would be no problem to return to his hometown as usual to become a county town and enjoy the incense. Taking his seat again, Zhou Qiu originally wanted to let this famous young hidden official sit on the main seat, but Chen Pingan still sat in the same place. Chen Pingan asked. I once saw the imperial court dispatch monks in the capital of Dali, together with the gods of the mountains and rivers and the city gods along the way, to lead the heroic spirits who died in the southern countries of Aquarius to return home. Why didn't you accompany them to the north? Lu Tai hesitated for a moment, then roughly explained, just because my colleagues are too obsessed. Once they leave the Hehuan Mountains, they will become confused and lose the last bit of true spirit. We still have unfulfilled wishes here, and we are unwilling to do so. If you leave, even if you become a lonely ghost, you will not hesitate. Even in the face of Chen Pingan, the man in armor still has reservations. After all, the other party does not have the official identity of Dali, especially the border army. Zhou Qiu smiled and said, actually, there is nothing to hide. Li Dang, the of the temple in Wooding Mountain, now has a demon monk named Gu Feng, who is Li Dang's capable general and used to be a prostitution temple on the border of Qingxing Kingdom. Mountain God, it secretly colluded with the barbarian army tent and leaked the whereabouts of our elite cavalry army. It is recommended to set up an ambush to kill. Apart from being a cultivator with the army, I was also in charge of spying for the army. In addition, the Demon Clan army was also worried that it was a counterplan, so they sent a scout to explore the road first, and just happened to meet Lu Biaochang and me on the narrow road. There was a sword repairer hidden in that savage scout. We were after the incident. To be precise, it took a few years after his death to know that the wild swordsman was among the 100 swordsmen of Tuiyue Mountain. Of course, the fact that the Demon Clan tried to ambush and kill our army also came to nothing. After all these years, we have no evidence. I just found out that the mountain had an irreversible relationship with Li Tang in his early years. It is very likely that Li Tang was the mastermind behind the scenes. He attempted to assassinate twice. After Zhao Fuyang of Hehuan Mountain knew our identity, he was probably afraid of our identity before we were alive. Killing all of us, but let us settle in Fengla town and kill the deputy envoy Guanju in Rome just because he has the ability. He will never ask about it, but this kind of personal vendetta without conclusive evidence and purely chasing the wind is not to be thought of. He took care of Gu Feng's crime, but Zhao Fuyang said, as long as we show evidence, let alone Gu Feng or Li Dang, he can break his neck and send him down the mountain. Chen Pingan nodded. So, Dui Zhou thinks that it is unlikely that Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji colluded with the wild demon clan. Zhou Qiu said, at least on my side, I haven't found any signs or clues so far. Moreover, according to the style of Dallas spy agency, after the war, it will repeatedly screen and inspect wartime intelligence. Since so many years have passed, Hehuan Mountain is still there. Standing upright, at least in the two intelligence offices of the military department and the Department of Punishment of the Dali dynasty, they should all be judged to be clean, and they really did not collude with the barbarian army back then. Lu Tai said, after all, there are 2 golden pills, and the tree is big to attract wind. If the foundation is not clean, you will not live today. Dali's side is not vegetarian. I heard that our King Luo has established an espionage agency directly under his jurisdiction. The case is extremely ruthless, often one arrest is a long list. The Taoist priest in cotton clothes finally had a chance to interject, and smiled. Pin Dao and the vassal King Song Mu are acquainted with each other. I used to meet him often in Muping Alley in Huaihuang County, Dalichu Prefecture. Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai were not sure whether the Taoist priest's words were true or false for a while. Chen Pingan smiled and said, don't pay attention to him, he is a cheater. The Taoist priest said, at most, it's eating and drinking, how can you tell a lie? A dozen or so armored warriors crowded around the door and alley, each with wide-eyed eyes, looking at the boy in the courtyard with a sword on his back, a young woman with a ball in a bun, and a Taoist priest in cotton robes. Most of them are young faces, and the oldest is only a young man in his 30s like Lu Tai. They all found it interesting to see Lu Biaochang, the most rude man with no etiquette, sitting there with his back straight. I used to see General XX, but I never saw Liu Biaochang so well behaved. He clasped his fists and smiled a few times when he met him, but he just turned around and changed his face with them, and began to say that if I hadn't become a scout, I would have delayed my future. Now who calls the general to whom? Let's talk about it again. The woman is afraid of marrying the wrong man, the man is afraid of entering the wrong profession, that is to say me. You are still laughing, I am a standard leader anyway, you bastards. The so-called usual, that is, when he was alive. Chen Pingan said, let them all come in and sit. Zhou Qi shook his head and smiled, no need. Lu Tai nodded and said, just letting them stay at the door is a bit of a worry, and you have to leave after watching the excitement. On the other side of the door, gathering together does not seem noisy, but some people can't help but ask. Chen Pingan, how high is the top of the Great Wall of Sword Qi? With the help of sword cultivators from various continents, there are really hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators on the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Chen Pingan, is your hidden officer also an officer? How old is he, and can he have a rank? Lu Tai glared and said, presumptuous, you can call Mr. Chen's name directly. Zhou Qi narrowed his eyes with a smile and said, you can't call your name directly, just call young Master Qin. Lu Tai said helplessly, it's a fool. The man in armor shouted to the door, be well behaved, Mr. Qin is Wen Xing's close disciple, a scholar. Don't you be ashamed of Dalianjing. Mr. Qin, I am a native of Yensang County, Yunzhou. I am very close to Longzhou. My ancestors are all businessmen, and I often go to Hongzhou town. Mr. Qin, I'm from Songyu County, Jiangyi. I heard from my second uncle that he studied at Shanaya Academy when he was young, and Chief Qi Shan taught them punishment and counting. Pei Qian raised his head to look at a roof. It was the chief guest secretary of Zhang's family in Tianchao County, Qi Song, a warrior in the golden body. Qi Song was terrified when he noticed the vision from this side before, and couldn't help but come here to find out. Just looking at her, the old man with a halberd beard and frog belly suppressed his suspicion, gathered his voice and asked tentatively, Xingqian? The monks who have been to the battlefield of Dali Suedu, especially the pure warriors, will never recognize the female master, Xing Seiqian. Pei Qian nodded. Qi Song immediately signed up. Pei Qian clasped his fists and returned the salute, I've admired the name for a long time. The Zhang family in Tianchao County seems to have an old family owner who is in the Jindan realm. Of course Qi Song knew that this was just a polite remark from Master Pei, but he already felt that his trip was worthwhile, and he had a good face. Seeing that the courtyard was lively, Qi Song was an old river and lake, so he didn't bother himself, but just set a scene and invited Master Pei to have a drink with him whenever he had time. Chen Pingan said, Miss Zhou, Brother Liu, I will help you to draw a magic talisman and a spirit protection talisman respectively. Go home. As for Li Dang and Gu Feng here, leave it to me. Lu Tai looked at Zhou Qiu. Zhou Qiu was also a little embarrassed. He rejected the other party's good intentions and seemed hypocritical. He agreed, but he always felt empty and unpleasant. Chen Pingan smiled and said, don't worry about this, you'll take Pei Qian to Hehuan Mountain first and join in the fun. Whether you want to leave or stay, discuss the results first, and then we will talk about it when we go down the mountain, and there are arrangements for going. There are also sayings about staying, but in fact there is no problem, there is no need to be embarrassed. Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai stood up and clasped their fists in thanks. Zhou Qiu was in a complicated mood. The sword-backed boy with a terrifying identity in front of him seemed to be a different person at once after his identity was revealed. She really couldn't combine the previous straw shoe boy, who had no scruples in his speech, and a detached personality, and the image of this young hidden official with a stable personality and understanding. Lu Tai left the yard first, and led the scout heroic spirits who lived and died together to get out of the way. Don't look at them being so noisy and talkative tonight, each with their own problems. But in fact, for so many years, whether it is riding in groups in the dark or gathering together in the alleys of Fengla town, they are both ghosts and often taciturn. Walking in the alley, Pei Qian covered her face with a piece of dough carefully made by the old cook. She turned her head, stretched out her fingers, gently kneaded and smoothed her temples, and then turned her head. She was a girl with yellowish freckles. Yes, there are freckles on the tip of the nose. Pei Qian talked about the process of visiting the ruins, but she deliberately skipped some details. Even if she concentrates her voice and secretly speaks to her master, with the realm of Bai Yujing's headmaster Lu, she must be no different from speaking in a loud voice. According to Mr. Zhong's calculations, the ruins have been around for a long time, suppressing a senior on the mountain who is difficult to judge by righteousness and evil, just because the time is too long. The text on the stone tablet, the meaning of Taoism has almost dissipated, plus the broken mountains and rivers of Tonggishao affected the stability of the stone monument, so there are signs of breaking out of the ground ahead of time. The stone monument swayed and collided with the long river of time. Only those two monks strayed into it and never drowned in the water. Lu Qin originally intended to be a listener, so he just listened to a storytelling without spending any money, but Qin Shanzhu had already asked what Master Lu had in mind, so he had to say, mostly, it was Mr. Sanshan Zhuhao's handwriting. In the ruins, the person who was suppressed by the stone tablet and the copper coin sword was a strategist monk who almost went into trouble a long time ago, so Mr. Sanshan Zhuhao will personally take action, erect the tablet and put the sword on it, so that she cannot get out of trouble. It is not only a victory, but also it is a kind of well-intentioned protector. If it is not like this, although the world is huge, the legal network is extensive and not leaking, with her consistent temper and behavior, she will definitely not hesitate to break the net, and there will be no place for her in the world. It's just that Lu Qin didn't tell the whole story, but I believe that with Qin Shan's knowledge, he must have guessed the identity of the other party. The woman in the basket who tried to take away the copper coin sword was the second ancestor of the military family and the Taoist companion of the first ancestor of the military family. Chen Pingan remembered the woman by the bonfire. After a moment of silence, he smiled and asked, "The two young monks who received this blessing are Shanzi Yeshio?" According to Pei Qian, they will practice with Li Shixing. Pei Qian replied, "It's not a loose cultivator, and they are not very young, less than 20 years old. A small sect called Su Nishan, who majored in Yin-Yang family 5-element supernatural powers, and also studied military techniques. Back then, when the mountain gate was breached by the wild demon clan, their master smashed a Jinshan talisman that had been enshrined in the ancestral hall for many years. The original intention was to send them out of the battlefield and win a chance of life. As for whether they can survive or not, it all depends on fate. Miao Jia and He Zhou were very lucky. Finally, through a kind of passing secluded magical power secretly passed down by Su Nishan Ben Men, they were able to walk through the water and straight into the river bed at low tide, and they were not washed away by the long river of time. Knowing, walking to the end of the fork in the road, like boarding a ferry at a ferry, successfully broke into that secret realm and practiced there for so many years, Miao Jia also obtained the pivot magic weapon of the abbot of the Great Array, which is a very rough ancient pottery pot. Their realm is not high. Miao Jia is now in the Dongfu realm, and He Zhou is a sword cultivator who was temporarily enlightened when walking on water. Now he is in the 4th realm, but he has a very strange flying sword of life, which can create illusions and make people feel whatever you are afraid of. As long as there is a slight flaw in the Tao heart, no matter how high or low the cultivator's realm is, there will be loopholes. Miao Jia has a very good aptitude for Taoism, and obtained a Taoist book with only patterns and no words in the ruins. Under her own understanding and her own experience, she became an eyebrow drawing artist on the mountain. Just relying on imagination, weaving landscape painting scrolls, plus she got the pottery pot, can control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the ruins, and cooperate with Yizhou's flying sword supernatural power. It is seamless. Chen Pingan suddenly asked, what is the capacity of the clay pot? Is it just enough to hold 1 liter of water? Pei Qian thought for a while, nodded and said, almost. Lu Qin opened his mouth and said, presumably that Miao Jia's aptitude will not be very good, but at the sight, he has been infiltrated by the essence of Dao Qi for a long time, accumulated over time. The Book of Changes cut the marrow, and was able to be reborn, with a pair of golden and jade root bones, and was forced tempered into a Dao seed. That young man is a sword cultivator, and his aptitude is much better than that of senior sister, but he is naturally repelled by that small world. Monument. Yizhou cultivating Dao there is of little benefit, but will be suppressed, so the realm will last for many years if they are stagnant. It is also a good thing. Otherwise, the better they are, the easier it is for them to lose their Taoism and hearts. They have long been occupied by the scattered evil spirits that cannot be suppressed by those ancient monuments and bronze swords, and they will become that senior. A bridge to the secluded, the real body is still trapped, and the yin and yang gods are out of the body, but they can return to the world with this, and then break the stone tablet, take the copper money sword, and be born a few years ahead of schedule. As for the 2 Qi practitioners in the lower 5 realms, why were they able to enter the site unharmed? It's absolutely impossible for them to rely on their own Taoism, or it was the elder who sensed his own Taoism in a long river of time passing by. 2 wisps of subtle breath, like 2 fireflies flickering in the endless night, only intentionally salvaged them. Speaking of this, Lu Qin lowered his voice and said a word that broke the sky, the pottery pot that serves as the hub of the Great Formation, in addition to being the earliest measure used to determine the volume between heaven and earth. I am afraid it is also the ashes of a certain military cultivator. Altar. It's not certain, it's just speculation. Lu Qin immediately smiled and said, as for the senior's handheld bamboo basket, it's not hard to guess. It must be a heavy treasure. The bamboo basket may not be empty, it can be used to salvage the golden fragments of ancient gods floating in the long river. Because of her sharp eyes, Pei Qian, who first discovered the ruins, once climbed to the top of that strange mountain. Zhong Kuei and Eugene are all ghosts. And the pair of young girls can be regarded as half a soldier cultivator. Probably this is the so-called God's will in the dark. At some point, this young Taoist priest in a cotton-padded Taoist robe had an extra branch in his hand and poked it on the street. In fact, what Ni Qing, Zhou Qiu, Lu Tai saw in the eyes of Bai Yujing, Headmaster Lu, were actually different appearances. For example, when a girl looked at Lu Qin, it was her original appearance wearing a lotus crown. The Taoist priest in Zhou Qiu's eyes was a handsome young man with clear eyebrows. What Lu Tai saw was a young Taoist priest with thick eyebrows and big eyes. It's just the world, who would question a seeing is believing. Chen Pingan said, I forgot to ask, what did Zhang Jiaolu come here for? It stands to reason that Lu Qin met at the scattered flower beach in Saiyu Mountain, and chatted at the foot of Luopa Mountain. Lu Qin would not do this too much and wander here again. Lu Qin was a little embarrassed, raised the branch in his hand, shook it, turned around his shoulders and pointed to the south, and then nodded in the direction of the Qingxing Kingdom Jin-Kai faction. There is a vein, twists and turns, and the poor are accidentally involved. Dao, there is no disaster, the poor Dao is considered to be dumb eating Huanglian. Chen Pingan asked curiously, how do you say it? Lu Qin didn't hide it either. Chao Rong, the master of Lingfei Temple in the old Baishuang dynasty, was one of Lu Chen's direct disciples in the Haoran world. This matter has already been known on the whole continent. And the founding father of the Jin-Kai school in Qingxing Kingdom is also an abandoned disciple of Ling Figuan who was removed from his genealogy name and Taoist title. Zhao Fuyang of Hehuan Mountain was once an outer disciple of the Jingxian's branch of the Jin-Kai sect. He just learned the secret magic powers, but the Taoism was no more orthodox. Just because a patriarch of Jingxianan had blue eyes on Zhao Fuyang, I don't care about the latter's spiritual origin, so Zhao Fuyang is the anonymous disciple of this patriarch. It is only said that the relocation of Wooding Mountain here, and the lingering mating with the falling Yuanshan Mountain, comes from a secret, Danshan magical power of Jingxianan. In addition, the rain flag of Dao Lu Yuchuanji, which can spread fog and pray for rain, must also be the secret method of Jingxian temple that Zhao Fuyang taught her. And the patriarch of Jingxianan, who preached to Zhao Fuyang carefully, is not only a close disciple of the founder of the Jin-Kai school, but according to the genealogy, he is also the master of Qingqian, the current leader of the Jin-Kai school. For this reason, Lu Chen personally took a trip to Hehuan Mountain. Of course, the premise is that a certain Chen Pingan traveled here, otherwise Zhao Fuyang's life and death will be made by God, and the blame will be taken by himself. Once he was involved with Chen Pingan, Lu Chen couldn't help but go out in person, for fear that the chaos would add to the chaos. After wandering around the two mountains before, Lu Chen discovered that the mansion master who fell into the Yuanshan Mountain was in love. There were 3 hanging statues of the ancestors secretly enshrined in the ancestral hall of the dense mansion. There is a portrait in the center, which is the previous master of Lingfei Temple, Xianjun Chao Rong. On both sides are the founders of the Jin-Kai school, a middle-aged woman with a female crown. And the patriarch who had the kindness of transmission to Zhao Fuyang, wearing a python waist jade, sword eyebrows, and purple beard, and a messy mess. It was only a short while ago that Zhao Fuyang was going to trace the origin and hang a portrait of Zhang Jiaolu on a higher part of the wall. It's still the Taoist priest Yuchuanji who can talk and talk, but it was difficult to persuade him to stop it. It's good to say that the husband has a heart. Zhang Jiaolu is such a goddess from the upper realm. Let's hang the portraits without authorization in the lower realm. The patriarch, who is high in the sky, is unhappy, attracting a catastrophe. The portrait of Lingfei watching Chao Xianjun is signed by Zhao Fuyang, a disciple of Qingjing Peak Jingxian nunnery. But the problem is that Lu Chen doesn't want Zhao Fuyang to be such a disciple. The top of Splashing Ink Peak. After the entire Hehuan Mountain and Fengla town were violently shaken, Zhao Fuyang's face turned pale. Yuchuanji turned her head and glanced at Hehuan Mountain. Her face was uncertain. She tried not to make herself appear anxious, and hurriedly asked in her heart, Fuyang, but Qingqian or Zhang Qiong's sinister means? Deliberately. Trick us to come out, so that we can be caught by surprise in the small town at the foot of the mountain. But the heart-pounding majestic momentum disappeared in a flash, and it didn't look like a sign of building a formation, which made Zhao Fuyang and Yuchuanji a little confused. Zhao Fuyang said in his heart, as long as you are in the Hehuan Mountains, you are not afraid of Zhang Qiong acting sneakily. Yuchuanji glanced at Qingqian. The old fox looked calm, but Zhang Kaiqin frowned slightly, and seemed to be equally suspicious. Zhao Fuyang didn't leave, but turned from a tough attitude at the beginning to bargaining. Qingqian, I can take a big step back. The key jade seal used to confer the crown prince can be returned to Qingxingguolu in the near future. Sure, but you must promise that within half a year, you will exchange 3 to 5 jade seals from other countries. Anyway, there are many Fugua and Xingua in the south of Aquarius, and there are many jade seals scattered all over the country. Less, but with the connections and financial resources of the Jin-Kai faction and the Zhang clan in Tianchao County, it is not difficult to accomplish this for the Lu clan emperor. Yuchuanji didn't seem to have expected that her husband would take the initiative to make this concession. The two sides did not discuss it in advance, but she was surprised by the male lead and the female lead. Although she was surprised, she didn't say much. Qingqian smiled and said, since it is bartering, then simply pointed out, the 3-party seal is exchanged for the 3-party. You and I don't waste my saliva here. whether it is okay or not. Please Zhao Fujuan to give you the right words now. Zhao Fuyang said, the wedding banquet after this marriage will be held until tomorrow night. Then the day after tomorrow, I will send a confidant to send the three-party jade seal to the capital of Qingxing Kingdom. Qing Qian nodded and said, that's the case. Zhao Fuyang said with a hearty smile, since it's settled, Master Cheng and Zhang Jianxian, can you sell me a thin noodle, or go to the mansion to drink wedding wine, sit for a while, and show your face, so that the guests don't think about it, or I have to trouble you two to leave the Hehuan Mountains for a while, otherwise all the distinguished guests in the house will be frightened and unhappy drinking, and they will all worry about whether the old nest and the dojo will be turned upside down. Qing Qian shook his head and said, you don't need to go climbing and drinking. Kai Qin and I didn't bring any gifts. Don't worry, we will leave Pomo Mountain now. I just hope that Zhao Fujuan will do what he says, and let His Majesty the Emperor meet us within 5 days. Go to those houses, otherwise I will sell the 2 palace princes of face tonight, but want to make me lose all face in His Majesty's side. Luomo, let them, master and apprentice, leave the town tonight, so there is no need to get angry with you over there, just say it's the family's intention. Zhao Fuyang bowed his hand and left Momo Peak with Yu Chuanji. On the way to the wind, Yu Chuanji turned around and found blood oozing from the corner of Zhao Fuyang's mouth. The previous town's vision, just in one fell swoop, severely injured the husband. You must know that Zhao Fuyang's real body is a white python, a descendant of Jiaolong. He is born with a tough physique and walks along the Panshan Mountain. The entire Hehuan Mountain is a veritable dojo. If it wasn't for Yuaning, or Jin Dan Jianxian, he wouldn't let Zhao Fuyang get hurt. In fact, Zhao Fuyang has not yet suppressed the chaos in the world, the mountains and rivers, and said in his heart, go back to the mountains and talk about it. Yu Chuanji said cautiously, I really don't need to lure them up the mountain. Zhao Fuyang sneered, if you can't eat it, Qing Qian is not an ordinary immortal. Zhang Kaiqin is also a sword cultivator. If you add Zhang Qiong who doesn't know where to hide, be careful to break his belly. Qing Qian raised his palm and used his palm to look at the mountains and rivers. Sight. Zhang Kaiqin said in her heart, Qing Shibua, shall we leave now? Qing Qian smiled and said, all right, so as not to startle the snake. It doesn't matter whether Zhao Fuyang has used a trick or has other intentions, Hehuan Mountain is destined to do weddings and weddings together. The long sword behind Zhang Kaiqin was unsheathed, and the light of the sword was as bright as an autumn leaf. She stepped on the long sword with her toes a little, and Yujin traveled far away, followed the old man who looked like a teenager, left splashing Imo Peak together, and drew 2 thorns again. Nate shattering light. It turned out that the imperial troops and horses of the 3 kingdoms, including Qingxing Kingdom, had gathered at the edge of Hehuan Mountain according to the agreement, and the deployment of troops was extremely concealed, without revealing the slightest rumor in advance, and many generals leading the troops did not even know who they were going to attack. The Liu family emperor even went on a personal expedition, leading a group of royal worshippers, various landscape gods and elite frontier troops, together with the rest of the 2 countries to close the net, and from 3 directions, besieged and attacked Hehuan Mountain. Just talking about the Liu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, they dispatched 3,000 forbidden troops, 8,000 frontier cavalry elites and 20,000 foot soldiers, plus the Yuashanjin who was temporarily recruited to the frontier army station, dozens of others. The gods, the Jinke faction removed the Jingxin's lineage, led by Chuiqing Peak, and all the cultivators who were directly descended from the peaks had all gone down the mountain and temporarily served as the cultivators of the Qingxing Kingdom. Emperor Liu and the monarchs of the other 2 countries agreed to raise troops to encircle and suppress Hehuan Mountain at the turn of Hai Shi and Zi Shi tonight. However, even if the cultivators and gods used all kinds of magical powers to clear the way, plus the ferry boat and the talisman boat, they would still have to see Hehuan Mountain in the early morning of tomorrow. The only people who knew the inside story in advance were the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom, Qing Qian, the real protector of the country, the ancestor of the Zhang clan of Tianchao County, Zhang Kaiqin, the swordsman, and the emperors and national teachers of the other two countries. Together, there would be no more than 10 people. Naturally, the Qingxing Kingdom and the Zhang clan of Tianchao County contributed the most, promising to destroy the Hehuan Mountain this time. The Lu clan only symbolically takes a very small piece of land, and the rest will be handed over to the two countries to divide up by themselves. To level the boundaries of Hehuan Mountain, the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom will strictly follow the established marching route. Along the way, more than a dozen large and small dojos, cave houses, and confiscated spoils will be the only source of income for Qingxing Kingdom's military dispatch this time. The entire treasury, as well as the Days Yuanshan Mansion and the Wooding Mountain Fanwan Mansion, together with the two mountain shrines, all the treasury and all the proceeds, the Qingxing Kingdom will not interfere in the slightest, and the two allies will share the account after the war. Zhang Kaiqin's sword light and the real person Qing Qian's Yufeng figure suddenly dissipated. After that, both sides hid their breath, sneaked for more than 100 miles, and finally came to a mournful mountain. The mountains and fields are swaying, the vegetation is lush, and on both sides of the Panshabin, the ancient trees are hundreds of years old, and there is no business. A burly old man with white hair and beard sat on the boulder by the cliff and asked with a smile, "Is Xiao Fuyang still unaware that the situation is not good?" Qing Qian sat cross-legged beside him, nodded and said, "Because there is a new mountain protection formation, the nascent Soul Earth Immortal, who is not hostile to several nearby countries. If I were him, I would take it lightly, relying on him and Yuchuanji. If we can defend and run, we are sure that we will not dare to forge a deadly feud with Hehuan Mountain." Zhang Kaiqin called the old man to Grandpa, and the old man smiled and nodded. They have formed a siege of Hehuan Mountain, catching turtles in the urn. Hehuan Mountain will hold a wedding banquet tonight. The group will gather together, and the snakes and rats will be in a nest. It saves a lot of trouble. Otherwise, there are more than 30 places in this area of thousands of miles. Of fish. Zhang Qiong sighed. It seems whimsical, but it works. Regardless of his background, Xiao Fuyang is indeed a rare genius of cultivation. Qing Qian said, "In the end, the other side is used in the crooked and evil ways. In the long run, the mind of the Tao is invisibly drawn by the nature. Instead of tempering the nature with the mind of the Tao, it will only mislead others and oneself. On the mountain, it is actually a positive saying." Zhao Fuyang and Yuchuanji, a python monster and a fox spirit, were entrenched on both sides of a large river in their early years. It seems that the well water does not violate the river water. And this big river in the middle of Aquarius continent later became one of the main roads of Dadu. And Zhao Fuyang, whose real body is a white python, first used the secret method of winding the mountain to completely refine the entire falling kite mountain, and then helped Yuchuanji to relocate to a wooding mountain, and taught her a superior house technique. Mating tail shape, diligent way. Zhang Qiong was non-committal about this, but just joked, this pair of Taoist companions really use the sky as the bed and the ground, and they have a field battle. It is really unseemly for a serious person like this old man to teach. Qing Qian reminded, "Elder Zhang, don't be disrespectful to the old man, Kaiqin is still here. When you Zhang Qiong was young, didn't you have a few fat powders? You owe a lot of love debts up and down the mountain." Who called himself Jiang Shangjin of Tianchao County? Zhang Qiong asked angrily, "How is Yuchunzi's golden elixir?" Qing Qian said, "When I see you today, it should not be underestimated." Although she has no signs of needing to retreat for the time being, it must not be too late. Zhang Qiong tooted, "That's the same as Master Qing, it's all about the bottleneck of Jin Dan. Zhao Fuyang is just that, after all, he has passed the true inheritance in your Jin K faction." In terms of teacher inheritance, he is inferior to your head. Not much, he was born with a good background, and his aptitude for cultivating is better. I was also convinced that he was promoted to the nascent soul. The white python turns into a dragon, and the yin jiao vomits a cloud of miasma. Fox charm. It would be fun to follow Zhao Fuyang to the nascent soul realm. She is a fox spirit, an ordinary Jin Dan cultivator. She is not easily toyed by her applause, just picking yang and replenishing yin who mice love is also the most vengeful. If she gets away with this siege, I will definitely stay far away. Not to mention Zhao Fuyang, who has already achieved a golden elixir over the years, but only to say that this time when he saw the fox demon Yuchuanji at Pomo Peak, Qing Qian found that she also had signs of a bottleneck, which shows that Zhao Fuyang personally opened up this shortcut of cultivating, and they have indeed made it through. If Zhao Fuyang is given some more years, he can concentrate on his spiritual refinement. Come to temper Hehuan Mountain, maybe within a 10-year period. He and his Taoist companions are really expected to both enter the nascent soul realm. It can be seen that it is no exaggeration to say that Zhao Fuyang is a hero. Zhang Qiong said with a smile, it is estimated that Zhao Fuyang can't figure out why the other two countries with constant border friction are willing to join forces with the Lu family of the Qingxing kingdom. Qing Qian said indifferently, since ancient times, fame and fortune have never been separated from one another. It seems that the Lu family of the Qingxing kingdom is seeking a name, and the other two countries are seeking profits, each taking what they need. In fact, the monarchs of the other two countries are now extremely polite to the Lu family, and I believe they will only be more polite in the future. After all, apart from the Qingxing kingdom, in the entire Aquarius continent, for the time being, there is no court under the mountain that can invite that big man to attend the ceremony in person. The Shuyue mansion of Baihua Lake, this time a large group of people came. Previously, Bai Mao and the others were looking at the wasteland from the top of the Momo Peak. The long snake of fire they saw was the battle of this water mansion. Miss Shan-san, Shuyue mansion is inevitable. Hu Jun Zhang Xiangdao, together with his Taoist companion Wei Chan, and his youngest son Zhang Hongquan, came to Hehuan Mountain together. Wanshan's quick son-in-law, Chenglong, is just a passing scene tonight. Shuyue Mansion is located in Baihua Lake in Miyun Country. It occupied the Dragon King Temple, which is said to have been eaten for thousands of years, drove away the temple blessings, used his own hands, made waves, and asked all passers-by for filial piety and incense offerings. Zhang Xiang Tao opened up a palace at the bottom of the lake, using the dragon palace shape of an overreaching land lake. At this moment, in the Fanwan Mansion, a ring-shaped banquet hall was specially built for the purpose of recruiting relatives tonight. Among them, there was a single elegant flower hole. Only Zhang Xiangdo's family of 3 was drinking, and the rest of the officials of the water mansion were arranged on the side of the falling Yuanshan mountain. A young man with a short stature said in a stern voice, I heard that the 3 girls have a bad reputation, and the boy has to wear a green hat before entering the bridal chamber with her. Zhang Xiangdao looked like an emaciated old man, wearing a crown facing the sky, wearing a black dragon robe, and performed a natal water method. The fog in the flower hall was hazy for a while, preventing the partition wall from having ears, and then he twisted his beard and smiled. Daoist, if you think about what to do with this kind of thing, your belly should be bigger. On Hehuan Mountain, there are 3 women and 1 man. The only one with a handle in the crotch of Yu Zhen is an unreliable thing. It seems that he is not interested in inheriting the family business, and likes to wander outside. Maybe one day you will die outside, and no one will collect the corpse. Hongquan, if you work hard, one day, you may be able to hold the title of Lord of the 3 Houses by yourself. The woman in the palace dress with the heavy powder on her cheeks giggled straight, with a naturally acerbic appearance. She pretended to smile charmingly. Hongquan, my mother is someone who has come here, and is most familiar with the matter of love between men and women. At a glance, it can be concluded that you wandering this good daughter-in-law, who has yet to go through the door, and the goddess of the mountain who went up the mountain and fell to the kite mountain, at first glance, they are accustomed to the sideburns. Good son, you are very lucky. The young man's eyes lit up. Really? The goddess of the mountain who fell into the Yuanshan temple, at first glance, is a stunner who is good at fighting in bed. Compared with the 3 girls of Huan Mountain who are about to marry, her appearance and temperament have to be not bad. He already coveted her, but because of the identity of the other party, he didn't dare to make trouble. Never thought that there would be such a marriage. The young man grinned and said, so that means Yu is pregnant with Liujia, buy one get one free, and the child will endure it. Zhang Xiangdao slapped the table and praised, those who achieve big things are not careful about the little things. If you have this amount of money, why not worry about big things? At this moment, a Qilong jade pendant on Zhang Xiangdao's waist buzzed, and there were 2 of them, just in pairs. They were unintentionally obtained from the mountain treasure hidden in the Dragon King temple. Zhang Xiangdao finally figured out the way out. Come, one of the wonderful uses is that it can transmit sound from thousands of miles. Zhang Xiangdao handed the other piece to a tortoise-like prime minister in the Dragon Palace. As for the eldest daughter who is extravagant and lustful and only supports her face, forget it. Now, Zhang Xiangdao has no expectations of her at all, and he has to rely on his youngest son Zhang Hongquan to support her huge family business in the Dragon Palace. Master Hu Jun, the big thing is bad. The steel of the Dragon King temple, somehow, came to life tonight. The beasts are so murderous, and controlling the stone steel that has been refined into treasure is a total mess for us in the Dragon Palace of Shuifu. Smash! The small messenger was sent to discuss, but the other party didn't answer, and only cared about the massacre. Now the soldiers of the water house have suffered heavy casualties, dying and fleeing. There is not 1 out of 10, the waves are raging, the water veins are chaotic, and the Dragon Palace is destroyed. We're all destroyed. The body of Her Royal Highness Princess Long was also smashed into mud by the strange stone tablet, leaving only the soul to escape, and Her Royal Highness Princess Long took refuge on the shore on her own. I was lucky enough to escape to the shore, and I had a little spare time to catch my breath, so I reported this to Lord Hu, and asked Lord Hu to return quickly. Ah. Zhang Xiangdao and the woman looked at each other. Home gone. As the turtle prime minister wailed, there was another dull sound that seemed to crack open, and there was no more sound. After a while, an unfamiliar voice sounded again, and said slowly, this little turtle can't bear to be beaten, I have already shot him to death. Zhang Xiangdao, and the old muscle spirit, since you have already heard the news, if you want to come back. Go back, I just happened to send you all on the road together, even if I don't go back, I will go look for you. The wedding banquet in Huan Mountain is about to start. All the guests have already taken their seats. Shanzai Xiao, the gods of the shrine, and the name of the house can be arbitrarily chosen, and the location must not be arbitrarily seated. In addition to Shuyue Mansion, there is also Shujian Lake Qinju. He is also qualified to occupy a flower hall alone. The other first-class guests of Huan Mountain occupy the largest banquet room. For example, Mrs. Pipa, whose name is Tianlai Cave, she gave away 1 Lei Xing and 1 water pill, which were considered extremely polite guests, just because she and Fan Wan Palace Master Yu Chuanji were very close friends. Sitting beside her was an old man named Black Dragon Immortal Monarch, a monk of the Sevuing Monster clan, who gave a red envelope of 18 snow money, who was once of water in the south of Aquarius. There is also the Demon King Tang Kuan, whose cave dwelling is located on the Ape Road. However, in the cave dwelling, he has a horizontal kung fu, which is equivalent to the physique of a martial artist in the 5 realms, making him a consummate gun and stick kung fu. As for the sturdy man who came here to congratulate him on a private talisman boat, he was different from Tang Kuan, a genuine and pure martial artist with 6 realms. This time, he came to the door to congratulate him, empty-handed and without gifts. He was most greedy for cups. It was obvious that he brought 2 maids to Hehuan Mountain and coveted the few pots of Xianjia wine. Fu Qi, because he was a friend of Yu Zhen, also took his seat here. The person in charge of greeting the guests here is the goddess of the mountain falling from Yuanyuan Mountain. She wears dark purple clothes, and she is graceful and beautiful. In the banquet room next door, it is the mountain leech Sang of Wooding Mountain who is in charge of hospitality. In the end, there is a side hall. The steward of Fanwan House is responsible for serving tea and water, and connecting with heroes from all walks of life. Wejiziling Qing Bai Mansion, the master of Baimea Bai Mansion, gave 50 pieces of snow money and a set of imperial ancient ink, so he can only drink here. Fortunately, although Hehuan Mountain has divided the guests into 3, 6, 9, and so on. But when it comes to drinks, they are treated equally. It is a kind of expensive Xianjia wine with 2 pots. It can be seen that Hehuan Mountain is still rich, and Baimao drinks, which is quite subtle. It is estimated that it will be able to return to the original soon. Palace Master Bai, who looked like a scribe in a crane cloak, picked up a piece of cake from the plate and chewed it carefully. From his direction, he could just see the Empress of the falling Yuanshan, full of the beauty of a mature woman. It's just that for some unknown reason, the 2 palace lords of Hehuan Mountain, Xiao and Yu, and their children did not show up, which was 2/4 of an hour longer than the scheduled time. On the other side of the town's main street, a young Taoist held a branch as if driving a car, looked up at the 2 mountains of Zuyuan and Wuding, and said with a smile, "If you can't do it, Wuyuan Mountain is also a cave, and the poisonous python sends a cave to a fox as a cave." The marriage recruitment is about to begin. All the demon kings, immortals, and cave masters in the Hehuan Mountains have all arrived. Under the archway at the foot of the mountain, there is no steward Yu who has called the name. He has already gone to Fanwan Mansion to entertain guests. Only the accountant who was in charge of writing the gift list was still sitting behind the table covered with red satin. Manager Yu did not forget to arrange a few guards, lest the accountant said he was gone. Lu Qin turned his head to look at the big tree and said with a smile, "This Xiao Fuyang is not bad. Master leads the door to practice as a person, and he just realized a shortcut to nascent soul. With a budding figure, the Jin K faction has missed a genius. If he were to find a place with strong mountain fortunes in the azure world with 9 mountains and 1 water, entrenched in the dragon veins, and sitting on the earth snake, Xiao Fuyang would have long been a Yuanying mountain flood dragon who could call the wind and the rain. It is too difficult to walk the water-melting Jiao dragon in the Qingming world with thin water transportation, so there are many mountain spirits who are forced to go to Panshan and Lianyue. At the table at the foot of the mountain, Lu Qin took out 3 red envelopes from his sleeves, each of which contained 2 snow money, and on the congratulatory gift list, it said Chen Ren, Jing Qian, Taoist Lu Qin. Going up to the dense mansion of the mountain, an emergency meeting was held in the ancestral hall. There were no outsiders, not even the 2 mountain gods. The eldest daughter Zhao, the second son Yujin, the third girl Yu Yi who is about to marry, and the most favored 4th young lady Zhao Yan. Zhao Fuyang said indifferently, "Just got the information, Qing Qian and the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom took the lead and joined forces with the surrounding 2 countries to attack my Hehuan Mountain in a big way. All the troops and horses are already on their way. The number of officers, subordinates, and cultivators is probably 300 or 500 together. There are also a small number of 100,000 soldiers under the mountain. The encirclement and suppression of Hehuan Mountain from 3 directions have already been launched. Obviously, it was an appointment long ago." Yu Yi said in shock, "Qingxing Kingdom has always had a grudge with them. There have been constant border disputes over the years, so how could they suddenly join forces?" Zhao Fuyang sneered, "What's the point of asking such a question now? Yuzhen said with a complicated expression, with the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom and Qingqian, really there is no room for maneuver. Zhao Fuyang's face was gloomy, and he shook his head and said, no need to talk about it, it will only be a waste of words. Everyone has taken the wrong medicine, and they have to come and eat the hard bone of Hehuan Mountain. Yu Chuanji whispered, where's Mrs. Pipe? Zhao Fuyang glanced at her coldly. Yu Chuanji was silent, and said nothing more. Zhao Fuyang looked at Yuzhen and asked, your friend surnamed Yan is from the Fu clan's Yan Hall of Fame. Yuzhen nodded and said, his real name is Fuqi. He is not only a son of Yan Yutang of Fu's family, but also highly valued by the ancestors of Yan Yutang. He was brought by his side and cultivated carefully since childhood. The chair in the ancestral hall will be replaced by him only when the talisman is in the golden elixir. Yu Chuanji said, Yuzhen, you will inform Qin Ju and Fu Qi later, and let them go down the mountain immediately. One is a cultivator of the genealogy of the true realm, and the other is a member of the Fu family. Even if you meet Qingqian and the others halfway, I believe that just revealing their identities will not stop them from leaving. Yuzhen heaved a sigh of relief and said, originally, I wanted to purchase and collect jade seals from Tong Yezhou through Fu's Yan Yutang to help my father increase your Taoism. On Aquarius Island, it is already difficult to obtain these jade seals from the emperor's family, unless they are robbed or stolen, but it is too risky to do so. Zhao Fuyang praised, I have a heart. Zhao Yan was at a loss, what are the parents going to do? Yu Yi's face was pale and colorless, and he said in a trembling voice, she and that Li Tang. Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, the moment they became the mountain gods of the two mountains of Zhui Yuan and Wuding, they were already doomed, sooner or later. Zhao Yan finally couldn't help but ask, father, mother, what are you discussing? Yuzhen said helplessly, what do you think about this marriage proposal? Zhao Yan asked, don't want the third sister to marry that idiot Zhang Hongquan, should we marry Hehuan Mountain and Baihua Lake Shuiwei Mansion to become in-laws? Baihua Lake is an important waterway business hub. As a result, Jinke faction and Tianchao County Mrs. Zhang will be a little more afraid of us. Zhao Fuyang sneered and said, Zhang Xiangdao and that old muscle spirit, an old turtle with a rotten Taoism, a dragon gate realm with no hope of forming a pill, are they also worthy of being my in-laws? Yu Chuanji covered her mouth and smiled coquettishly, her eyes suddenly sharpened, tonight is the time for your father's preaching. All the people who participated in the banquet in Fanwan Mansion are weird, their flesh and blood, soul and spirit, demon pills, those the golden body of the prostitute who came from the wrong way will be crushed by the falling kite and the Wuding Mountain, and they will all be ground to the ground, and they will all be reduced to the foundation of your father's enlightenment in the nascent soul realm. In Fengla town at the foot of the mountain, there are about 200 households living in the sun. In addition to attracting mountain monsters, Yin soldiers gather into an army, etc., it is just Zhao Fuyang and Hehuan Mountain posing for outsiders like Qingqian. It seems to be a long-term operation here, as a separatist force in a feudal town. In the past, Zhao Fuyang helped the gods in the temples and became the White Book gods in the courts of various countries. Naturally, it was to prevent Mrs. Pipa and Tang Kuan from becoming suspicious in the Hehuan Mountains, especially Qingqian, who was the most suspicious by nature. It's easy to do bad things. After so many years of operation, the number of ghosts, mountain zealots, and prostitutes in the Hehuan Mountains has become saturated, so Zhao Fuyang organized such a so-called mountain marriage to catch them all. Anyway, several imperial courts, including the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, regarded these goods as thorns in their eyes. Originally, Zhao Fuyang planned to join the nascent soul, and then rely on such a great achievement in strangulation to make a deal with them. If the other party is interested, he will help the Taoist priest Yu Chuanji to get a title, and let her be a legitimate mountain god, and he himself, who has entered the nascent soul, will be in the line of Jinxianan and be favored by the Jin K faction. Feng begged for justice, and it was done with one stone. Yu Chuanji said cautiously, "Husband, those scouts in the town, their identities." The fierce Xiao Fuyang dared to kill even Qing Qian now, but this matter was obviously quite a headache. Xiao Fuyang thought for a moment, and said, "You move, wait and kill Gu Feng, unscrew the head, throw it directly to Lu Tai and the others, then drive them out of the town, and tell them again, except for Gu Feng, Wuting Shan Li Tang will soon be killed, and you don't need to say anything more, to avoid unforeseen complications. If they don't want to leave the town, then they should stay, and they can't blame anyone for their own death. When you open the mountain protection formation, you only need to hold on for a quarter of an hour. If you can hold on for half an hour, I can completely stabilize the nascent soul realm. During this period, the treasury and all of your savings will be used up. No need to worry. During the crucial quarter of an hour, you should pay special attention to Qing Qian, Shang Qiong, Shang Kai Qin, Wufu Qi Song, and don't let them ruin my good deeds. After a quarter of an hour, you're all done. Young isn't the emperor of the Lu family of Xinghua driving his own expedition. It's just that when I enter the nascent soul realm, I will go to meet him for a while. I want to see Qing Qian and King Xingguo, as well as the confidence that no jade and stone are burned. Qing Qian, still don't you dare to say that we hit the stone with an egg, just wipe the sleeves and it will be clean. In fact, the entire Fanwan mansion is located within a large mouth of the real body of the big python, and Xiao Fuyang can swallow it in his stomach with a little raised his head. As a fox charm, Yu Chuanji has already sacrificed the red powder ecstasy tent, which is one of the life objects, plus those drinks and food that have moved hands and feet, hiding greedy insects and blind potions. Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji first made mountain refining, and then the pair of Taoist companions will each show their real bodies to turn over the mountain, as if they are going through the clouds and rain. In 2 mountains. After that, Zhao Fuyang can refine the mountain as a part of his true body, just like a small world, no longer need to draw the ground as a prison, and be detained in the same place by the falling Yuan Shan, which is both a dojo and a cage. Zhao Fuyang said solemnly, "Success or failure is here. As long as tonight's event is successful, if the luck is a little better, your mother can break the bottleneck of Jindan and enter the nascent soul realm in 1 step. At that time, whether it is with the Lu family of the Qingxing kingdom, the emperor bargained, whether I would replace Qing Qian as the head of the Jin K sect and the real person protecting the country, or whether we simply moved to Tongya continent and established a sect there, it was a trivial matter." The 3 of them were walking on the mountain road, near the Fenwan mansion with bright lights. The young Taoist still poked the ground with a curved branch. One accidentally stabbed the branch in the abdomen, and threw the branch away. Lu Qin rubbed it. Stomach, thumbs up, and smiled. For a Jindan cultivator, it is indeed a first class, generous and daring. Lu Qin leaned back, glanced at the empty scabbard that Qin Pingan was carrying at the moment, and said with sincere admiration, "A piece of ancient water, don't break the enemy thinly." Sort of coming Chapter 1019. Lu Qin sighed incessantly, thinking and drinking. The sun and the sun, the sun and the moon are like flying pills. In the past, the emperor of the Tian family sang and danced. Later, the palace queuing did not hear any more leaks. When Yufuzuan took over the entire wooding mountain and named the royal woman whose golden branches and jade leaves were named the county head, this private mansion that had been abandoned for many years was renovated and renovated. Expansion, only to restore the former prosperous style. The 3 of them were just approaching the Fanwan mansion, and before they even got to the door, they could smell a strong aroma of wine and fat powder in the night wind. Lu Qin asked casually, "Qin Pingan, do you know the origin of the names of falling Yuanshan and Fanwan mansion?" Chen Pingan said, Zhou Qi just mentioned that there are caves and cliffs in Zuiyuan Mountain. The name of the mountain is related to the prophecy. Zhao Fuyang regards it as the foundation of enlightenment. As for the powder pill house, it is not clear. Previously, on the top of Chen Pingan's splashing Mo Peak, when he looked at Hehuan Mountain from afar, he saw two fluorescent lights. Except for the falling kite and Wuding, the two mountains were like two snakes intertwining. There is also a hidden magical effect of connecting yang and yin. However, Chen Pingan can only be regarded as a general view. After all, the realm is like a mountain, and you can only see far-reaching when you stand high. The talisman and puppet clone attached to the next mind greatly limits Chen Ping's eyesight. Lu Qin smiled and said, if you look at the moon phase from outside the sky, it will be like a bullet on the ground. Someone paints half of it with powder, and if you look at it from the side, the powder is like a hook. Right? Chen Pingan thought of the spectacular scenes of overlooking Hauran and passing the ancient stars in the sky, and nodded. Master Lu said a good metaphor. Lu Qin rubbed his hands together and said, small bet on happiness, take a gamble. Chen Pingan didn't ask what the bet was, and bluntly popped out two words, bet. Lu Qin said, if Pindao wins, hand over Zhao Fuyang to me. If we lose, the whole Hehuan Mountains are in a mess. Pindao will be a dung picker tonight. Would you like to add a little color head, 100 gold and copper coins? Then Chen Pingan asked, what are you going to bet on? Lu Qin stretched out his palm and shook it. Chen Pingan said, don't be so clueless, you have to give some reminders. Lu Qin patted his head and forgot about the young hidden officer beside him. Now he is a 4-level martial artist who is proficient in swordsmanship. Many of the Wangqi Kung Fu and talisman skills similar to mountain gods and Hu Jun's natural supernatural powers are probably all handed over to Yuxuan's capital. That fellow Daoist Wu Di must have fallen into the discussion in the Yuanshan Ancestral Hall. Chen Pingan really didn't know the content. Lu Qin pointed to the mansion in front of him and gave a clue, since we have gone through a mountain refining and room-in-the-room technique. The road that has both, Zhao Fuyang is reluctant to climb the turtle, and can only rely on absorbing the dragon energy of the jade seal to refine the two mountains of falling kites and Wuding to break the bottleneck of Jindan. Lu Yuchuanji wants to break through the border tonight, so as to give Lu clan of Qingxing Country and Zhang clan of Tianchao County a solid dismount. So we bet that when the entire fallen kite mountain turns over, it will be left or right? Chen Pingan knew it at one point. Headmaster Lu is giving money from a pool. The establishment of Fanwan Mansion was the work of Zhao Fuyang, and according to the news leaked by Lu Qin, Zhao Fuyang has a lot of origins with Jin Ke School and Lingfei Temple. Confucianism advocates that the 7 lights rotate in the left direction of the sky, while the Yin-Yang 5-element school and the Li school are just the opposite. In this way, Zhao Fuyang, who has already been refining and chemically integrated with the falling Yuanshan mountain, will definitely turn to the right. Pei Qian was keenly aware of the slight vibration of the mountain roots under her feet. She quickly raised her head to look at the sky. The stars were normal. It was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster carefully set up by the monks. Murder, the dragon and snake landed. Perhaps for all the heroes in Fanwan Mansion who are drinking and eating meat, most of them have already drank a lot of meat, and they may not be able to realize this unusual sign. Is this going to be served in a pot? This Zhao Fuyang is ruthless enough. All the guests of Fanwan Mansion drink and eat meat. He even swallows the wine and meat into his stomach and eats it up. Play the abacus well, and the fat and water will not flow to outsiders. Chen Pingan said, I'll bet on the ground without moving the mountain. Most of the branch in Lu Chen's hand was looking for a dragon to point a hole. Lu Chen easily overwhelmed the Hehuan mountain in a way that seemed like a child's play. Lu Chen walked sideways, raised his hands, all gave thumbs up, all are brilliant. At the end of the main street in Fimla town, there is a big tree by the gate of the mountain. The accountant, who was sitting behind the table and yawning, was startled by a rustling sound. It turned out that a branch fell to the ground. By the candlelight of the red lanterns in the archway and the nearby restaurant, the young man stretched his neck to look at it, only to think that it was strange. It was not a dead branch on the tree. How could it be familiar? The person who can be the accountant has a good memory. After thinking for a while, he remembered the cotton-padded Taoist priest who took out 3 red envelopes. It seemed that he had such a mountain stick in his hand. How did he drop it down the mountain? The 2 servant girls who were temporarily serving as the concierge in the Fenwan house never expected that it would be so late, and there were guests coming to the door to congratulate them. A young girl with a graceful figure hurriedly hid the cakes in her sleeves, turned her head and wiped it. Corners of the mouth. The boy in straw sandals with the sword on his back, the Taoist priest in green robes with the cloth strips tied to his calf, and the young woman with average appearance, they didn't look like the kind of rich and noble people, so it was only natural for the 3 of them to be led through the corridor by the maid. The aisle was finally led into a side hall. The 7 or 8 wine tables that were originally full are now sparse and not full. At least half of the seats are vacant. The steward, who is in charge of refilling wine here, is in charge of this. It's also very helpless. These bastards, all with a jug in one hand and a cup in the other, took the initiative to run to the 2 banquet halls next door to make a toast. Some of them just took root there, and some of them were not enough, and they would rather stand and drink. I also don't want to go back to the original side hall to sit and eat. The people lady in Tian Lai cave chatted with the old man who was self-proclaimed Black Dragon Immortal Monarch. There are people who want to make a toast, and there are also people who are here to cheer on the 2 big men. Besides, no one is busy in vain. Following Madame Peep's exaggerated movements, one by one shifted their gaze, and their Adam's apple moved slightly. The big monster who opened up the cave on UNU Road, and the 6-level warrior who dared to come to the door empty-handed, are there to persuade each other to drink, and talk about the experience of physical training together. Just drink it. The Xianjia wine brewed by the Fanwan mansion itself has aura, which is far better than ordinary fairy brewing. If it is sold at a ferry somewhere, it is impossible to start with 3 or 5 snows, and the wine tonight seems to taste like especially mellow and full of spiritual energy, far surpassing the previous banquets held at Hahuan Mountain. The 2 palace monarchs are rich and powerful. After this wedding banquet, didn't they directly drink the wealth of several wedges Xiling Qing by palaces? Many of the maids in the Fanwan mansion who were in charge of serving dishes and fetching wine, Yingying Yan, were just as stubborn as threading needles, and some were persuaded to drink too much. Across a banquet hall, the goddess of the mountain who fell into the Kite Mountain did not drink less, and she was already in a state of intoxication, and her eyes were like silk. Lu Qin smiled and said, "There is a big banquet outside the gate of the Ghost Gate, and the wine is drunk in the pink tent." Scholar He Cloak saw the figure of the boy with the sword on his back, picked up his chopsticks and pointed at him, helplessly said, "Is it so stubborn? I like to join in any fun." The sword-backed boy smiled and said, "I like to join in the fun since I was a child. What I owe in the past is now made up." Bai Mao waved his hand, lowered his voice and said, "Everyone is here, just sit down and chat slowly, eat delicious food, and try to get some money back." Previously, Bai Mao had always been distressed about his red envelopes, and he spent 50 pieces of snow to spend money. Now, there is an extra Qinren. The key point is that this young man with a sword also brought 2 friends who were at the banquet, and he felt more comfortable all of a sudden. It doesn't seem to lose much. Seeing that Director Yu was busy persuading wine at another table, Bai Mao continued to remind, "Chen Ren, remember to drink an extra pot tonight if you can, don't drink the good wine, but the real Xianzhou wine." In our house, Director Yute said that according to the rules of the government, everyone has one pot. But as long as you are willing to open your mouth, there will be a second pot. Whether there is a third pot or not depends on your mouth. The one at the next table, the one who shakes the fan, with thin skin and tender meat, is a gentle scum, teased a few words with the maid here, and then secretly gave him a third pot of fairy brew. After the sword-backed boy sat down, he said, I am a thin-skinned person, and I don't dare to beg for more alcohol. Bai Mao choked for a moment. The boy said, It's okay, I have a thick-skinned guy by my side. I'll ask him to speak later and show the maid a palmistry, calculate the marriage, and so on. 2 pots and 3 pots of wine are all there. The young Taoist sat limply, leaning back against the chair, rubbing his left shoulder with his right hand. Seeing that the scribe in the crane cloak cast his gaze, the Taoist smiled brightly and clasped his fists. Chen Pingon looked at the goddess of the mountain who fell into the Yuanshan temple, thought about it, and remembered it. No wonder it looked familiar. After many years, her general appearance and outline have remained the same, but after becoming a mountain god, her aura has changed a lot, and she looks like she is 10 years younger. This is the benefit of cultivation. Many female nuns with good cultivating qualifications may not know what crow's feet are at the corners of their eyes for their entire lives. Since ancient times, the realm of Taoism has been the best fat powder for women. Pei Qian gathered together and asked in secret, Master, have you met an acquaintance? Chen Pingon shook his head and said, It doesn't count. When I traveled to Shushui country before, I barely met and didn't talk a word. If I remember correctly, her real name is Xiao. I don't know why she became the goddess of the mountain who fell from the Kite Mountain. The Shushui kingdom is a long way from the Hehuan Mountains. I remember that when I left Jinshui Villa and traveled alone, a large group of people from the rivers and lakes rushed out of the mountains and forests, rushing to a convoy of dignitaries and relatives of the Shushui kingdom on the official road. The former was obviously wrong. I don't know that I kicked an iron plate. In that convoy, besides the wife of General Chu Hao, there were also 2 women with good identities. In addition to a team of stalwarts and fine cavalry, in fact, there was a hidden cultivator in the army. Long Menjing Fulu cultivator and Guanheijing Jiangxiu, just pick one out, and they can kill the assassins in an instant. As a result, a certain Jianghu Sr., who is not too young, does things very authentically. Deliberately under the banner of Jinshui Villa and Song Yushao, trying to muddy the rivers and lakes of a country, as for the life and death of Shanzhuang and Senior Song, whether they will be wiped out by troops sent by the Shushui kingdom, especially this one. When Lao Jianghu passed by Chen Pingon, he had a plan and directly gave Chen Pingon the name and identity of Chu Yue of Jianshui Villa. In the end, it was Chen Pingon and the Sevuing sword cultivator who fought a battle to settle the storm and let the people from the rivers and lakes escape. Of course, they didn't care much. According to the old swordsman from the sea-viewing realm, a little widow can exchange each head for immortal money, so she should be worth a little summer money. It didn't take long for Chen Pingon to be at the Longshan ferry, and before he got to the Qingfufang where Zhang Keikin's owner was, he heard news on the way that the righteous people in the arena, headed by that Shaun Vexia, gave up their lives and forgot to die. He did not hesitate to fight the rebels of the Chu party to the death. Unfortunately, in the convoy, 1 year old and 1 young, 2 sword immortals were in charge, and they did not hesitate to fight for the tiger, which led to their close success. Bai Mao noticed that the sword-carrying young man's eyes were fixed and heartless. He laughed and said, Brother Chin, he really is the same person, and there is a reason for it to meet at first sight. Then the Wejnai Palace Master Bai noticed that the young woman who was plain-looking and only had the appearance of a middle-aged person, looked at him. The little girl had a strange look. Bai Mao asked with a smile, Brother Chin, who is this girl? Chen Pingon smiled and said, Eldest disciple, I have studied martial arts with me for many years. The surname is Xing Mingqian. The qualifications are good, and he has made a name for himself. His reputation in the arena is greater than that of me as a master. Bai Mao has already figured out the general context of chatting with this guy. As long as you let go of it completely and show your face, there will be no embarrassment. If you talk about Xiantian again, you can have an inexplicable ease and comfort, nodded and said, "My brother Qin has a great reputation, which is normal. The youth is better than the blue. It is a good thing. It is said that in the rivers and lakes, a master has been looking for a master for 3 years, and a master has been looking for a master for 3 years. The children of the people, delay each other." In fact, Bai Mao wants to say that just how old you are, Chen Ren, how old are you now, how many years can you walk in the world, and what kind of fame can you have, compared to that young sword immortal, Zhang Yujiao. Bai Mao turned his head and looked at the young woman with sparrows. Palace Master Bai raised a smile, raised the air of an elder, and asked, "Have you ever entered the third realm of qi refining?" Pei Qian smiled and said, "It depends on the opponent's realm." Bai Mao was startled. As expected of Qin Ren's apprentice. 1 or 2 pieces of money, from the mouths of your masters and students, always have a pound of momentum and demeanor. Could it be that the young people on the rivers and lakes outside are so virtuous in their speech? Chen Pingon picked up the chopsticks and said with a smile, "Eat." Pei Qian, who was sitting upright, then picked up his chopsticks. Bai Mao nodded secretly, still a bit of a rule. Look at the woman, she doesn't drink, she only eats the food in front of her on the table. It was the young Taoist priest in the cotton-padded Taoist robe, who was like a reincarnation of a starving ghost. When almost everyone was busy drinking more wine, he asked a maid for 2 bowls of rice and specifically told her to go to college. The bowl, at this moment, has begun to bow his head and cook the rice. With a crown on his head, Bai Mao, who was proficient in appreciation during his lifetime, couldn't help but take a few more glances, and always felt that it was worth a little money. Lu Qin raised his head, picked up a large piece of chopsticks, and said vaguely, "Why is Palace Master Bai not curious? Why is Miss Xing going to apprentice with our brother Qin?" Bai Mao smiled and said, "Where the Tao exists, the master exists, age doesn't matter. On the road of martial arts, the elders are the ones who walk ahead." I saw the young Taoist nodded vigorously. No wonder everyone said that master worshipping disciples and grandsons, respect for the right way. In the past, I always knew a little bit about it, but today's sentence from Palace Master Bai can be regarded as a complete understanding. Why doesn't the Taoist priest drink? This is the only Xianjia wine brewed in the entire Hehuan mountain world. It is the Taoist line of law that has its own rules and regulations. You are not allowed to drink. Fong Tsayu, the steward, asked the maid to bring 3 pots of Fenwanfu immortal brew, but he did not give more, but said that after drinking it, he felt that it was not enough, so he could let him know. After all, this side hall does not have enough identity. Like several other banquet halls, people start with 2 pots of wine. As for Madame Pipe, drinking is almost the same as drinking water. But the question is, this young Taoist priest with a lotus crown on his head is very good at eating meat. It is reasonable to say that there is no separation between meat and wine, so how can he eat and not drink? Where the path of Xiaodao is shabby, there is no ancestor, and the master doesn't care about this. The young Taoist waved his hand and said, "Besides, listening to your words is like drinking 3 jars of wine." Bai Mao laughed, and finally saw a normal person who could speak. After taking a sip of the wine, Bai Mao's spiritual light suddenly appeared. He finally figured out why he always felt something was wrong. He turned his head and asked, "Jing Qian. Guan Erjing. Money and money." Pei Qian nodded. Bai Mao tapped on the table with his finger and smiled. You girl, what the are you thinking? Palace Master Rong Ben is relying on the old and betraying the old. Let me tell you something, if you worship that great female master again, you won't even change your surname and name. Pei Qian twitched the corners of his mouth and said nothing. If this was the black charcoal of his childhood, the tomb of the 18th generation of the ancestors of the Bai Palace Master would have been full of firecrackers. Bai Mao is a scholar and has a good face. There is nothing he can do about her, so he turned to look at Qin Ren. Brother Qin, you are a master, and you don't care about such a big thing? Chen Pingon nodded with a smile. Yes, that's right, it's justified. It's me who wandered outside all the year round and neglected to discipline my apprentices. Pei Qian took a big chopsticks of wild game, and chewed it carefully, his cheeks bulging and crunching. Lu Qin gloated at the misfortune and said with a grin, Palace Master Bai, our brothers share the same illness and take pity on each other. Let's go together, and the poor road will bring soup with wine. Bai Mao raised the wine glass and drank it all in one go. Lu Qin took out a picture album of flowers and birds from his sleeve. At first glance, Palace Master Bai is a collector. This is because I paid a lot of money to pick up the leaks. Palace Master Yang can help you and appreciate it. Bai Mao smiled, shook his sleeves, and reached out to take the booklet. After flipping a few pages, Bai Mao hesitated for a moment and said, to tell the truth, there is skill, and it looks like the handwriting of rich and noble children. It has the essence of world painting. It is meticulous, rigorous and neat, but unfortunately it is dead painting after all. These flowers and birds always feel that they are not only simple and elegant, but also have a bit of een after watching them for a long time. Seeing the demented appearance of the young Taoist who was struck by lightning, Bai Mao quickly explained, the mansion master said Yin Qi is not derogatory. It is similar to some water and land paintings in temples and palaces, which are ghostly and can warn people. I'm just worried that the owner of the album is not the kind of person with longevity. The Taoist priest should also know that if the life of a famous painter is short, it will be difficult for them to achieve success and fame. The young Taoist said sadly, if you don't live for long, your peers will sing less, there will be fewer disciples and grandchildren, and if you have a few worthy sons and worthy grandsons, you will not be able to help them become famous. How to sell at a high price is not worth talking about. When the world is better in the future, there will be more money in your pocket, and there will be more idiots with money, who only recognize the appearance and not the person, especially in this antique business. How can you make up a few stories and cheat big money? Bai Mao patted his thigh. The Taoist priest's opinion can be said to be able to see the moon through the clouds. Chen Pingon glanced at the flowers and birds painted in the album. There was no signature, but there were several private seals. From this, he already knew that the album was from the prince of the Lu family of Qingxing Kingdom. Bai Mao's eyesight is still good, and it does have a bit of een. As a country's hidden dragon, this prince does not have the vigorous atmosphere of the lord of the country's handwriting. As for the street talk in the Qingxing Kingdom's capital, as well as some after-dinner chats in the Xianjiayan, they all gave a high opinion of the famous Lu family prince. Lu Qin smiled and said, in the final analysis, it is because of the failure to understand the essence of the world painting, otherwise it will only be lively and full of business. How can Palace Master Bai feel that it is boring and has no business? Speaking of this, Lu Chen sighed and slammed the album on the table. That's it, it's just a loss. It's not annoying, it's better to sell it to Palace Master Bai at a low price. Seeing that the young Taoist was so shameless, Bai Mao put his fingers together and pushed the album to his side. Is he trying to buy or sell by force? Dare to spend a lot of money to find leaks, just to pave the way for the killing at this moment. Good picture, see you. Bai Mao then stretched out his hand to hold the album firmly, and said with a smile, even if it's not a priceless item, it's definitely not a crude painting. A gentleman doesn't take people's favor. I'm too embarrassed to buy it. I begged the Taoist priest to take it back. The young Taoist was full of strength, his fingers trembled slightly, and he added more strength secretly, but he still couldn't move the album, and his face flushed in an instant. Palace master, we are all friends we can talk to, and the price is easy to negotiate. Why should the Taoist give up his love? To tell the truth, behind this picture book, there is a Taoist book copied by Anonymous, with more than 1,000 words, which is incomparable. According to the content records, in addition to white bones and meat, it also speaks of many spiritual principles, such as can white bones raw meat, what can be raw bones, Palace master, it's hard to buy an immortality with money, it's a rare opportunity. There's no such shop in this village. Since there is an undead side, why does the Taoist still resell it to others? The qualifications of the poor Taoist practice are good enough, very good. I have learned everything that should be learned, but I really can't learn more. How much? 2 snows cost money. No less. Bai Mao's face was stiff, and he almost yelled at him. Is it stupid to be an old man? The so-called immortal party only asks for 2 snows to spend money. For my friend's sake, even a single snow can cost money. Bai Mao's face was black. It was certain that the other party was a fool, and then he tried to pull himself together as a fool. At this moment, the sword-carrying boy raised his hand and asked his maid for an extra pot of immortal brew. Palace master Bai thought about it, then took out a snow money from his sleeve and placed it on top of the flower and bird book. In fact, after Bai Mao wanted to buy the album, he would return it to the other party, and then he persuaded this young Taoist with a sincere deceit, not to be so messed up in the future. Going out, it is easy to be beaten. It's just that Bai Mao was worried that this would lead to the loss of the other party's face, so he gave up, just spent a lot of money and made an unreliable friend. When giving out the money of the gods, there is an extra book of golden letters on a certain page of the album, pointing directly to the golden elixir. When Bai Mao had this thought, he added more texts in the middle part of the Taoist book, up to Yu Pu. One of Bai Yujing's avatars of Headmaster Lu, the real person with the bones under the plum tree. Now he is one of the 10 candidates for the newest 10 people in the Qingming world. This Taoist formula is the root of Baigu Zenrin's Taoism. Lu Chen's so-called immortal formula is indeed worthy of its name. Because the 2 princes of Hehuan Mountain did not show up for a long time, all the guests who participated in the wedding banquet for marriage and daughter-in-law were aware of the slightest signs. Just talking about that flower hall, the distinguished guests of Baihuahu Shuyue Mansion, there is no reason to blow up the nest. The eldest Miss of Hehuan Mountain and the 4th Miss Xiao Yan seemed to be comforting the Hu Jun Zhang Xiangdao over there. Yuzhen shouted out Qin Ju, who was in a separate room, and the talisman next door, and walked straight to the outside of Fanwan Mansion. The mountain goddess of the falling Yuanshan Mountain, who had already been slightly drunk, and Li Ding of Wooding Mountain seemed to have obtained the secret order of the 2 palace monarchs, saying that the banquet would be officially open tonight at the most for a quarter of an hour, ensuring that the distinguished guests would not wait for a long time. Arriving outside the mansion, Yuzhen folded his fists and bowed his head, apologizing, and said bitterly, "Something happened in the mansion, and I need to close the door to do things. Uncle Qin, Brother Yan, I made you laugh." Qin Ju was born in a native of Shujian Lake, and he was used to it. After all, Fu Qi is a son of a noble family with an innocent background. Although he has gone out for several years, this is the first time he has encountered such a battle, and he said softly, "You have already torn your face with the Jinke faction and Tianchao County Zhang. If this is the case, with the behavior of these immortal mansions and cultivators on the mountain, they must have been prepared long ago, and there may be their inner response among the congratulatory guests in Fanwan Mansion tonight." Yuzhen couldn't leak his father's plan, so he had to use an excuse that he thought up in the family ancestral hall, in the treasure house over there in the dense mansion on the mountain, there is a treasure of the town house that my father values very much, just now, was stolen inexplicably. My father was furious, and he had passed a secret order that the mountain needs to be closed immediately, and the door should be closed to search everyone. No matter who it is, only entry is allowed. There are no fuel-efficient lamps, they are all unruly desperados, and it is easy to make trouble later, and there will be blood if you don't know. Fuchi asked, "You really don't need me to stay and help?" In the borders of several nearby countries, such as the two palace rulers on the mountain, as well as the Jindan realm of Qingqian and Zhangqiong, are in the sky. Then he in the Dragon Gate realm, not to say he can turn the tide, but only to do his best. Think about it. Not difficult. Yuzhen shook his head, his eyes sincerely said, "Fu Qi, listen to the persuasion, you don't get involved. The matter is really big, in short, you and I will find a chance to talk about it later." Fu Qi nodded, "I plan to take a trip to Shujian Lake. Oriole Island Zhongsu has a good relationship with my ancestors. If you want to find me, just send a letter to Oriole Island with flying swords." In Fengla town, Qi Song found Zhang Yujiao and Jin Luo, and the old man didn't talk nonsense. He secretly whispered a word to the young girls, and directly asked them to follow him and leave the town. Because Qi Song is a warrior with a golden body and has not been able to travel far, the old man just swept away in the dark. The young man Yujin was only more than 10 feet away from the ground, and the girl was next to the ground to control the wind. Jin Lui joked, "Grandpa Qi, you are so good at drinking, why don't you climb the mountain for the wedding banquet? If you go, Zhang Yujia and I can follow you up the mountain." Qi Song, the chief guest officer of the Zhang family in Tianchao County, is a very famous old urchin who is very close to the younger generation. The old man smiled at this moment. The wine is burning with flames, and the color is a steel knife. If I go to the mountain, one will control it. I couldn't stop, I was drunk and confused, and then I was caught by the three girls, Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji, who insisted on recognizing me as their son-in-law, drinking and entering the bridal chamber, couldn't bear it. Jin Lu snorted. The old man teased and said, "Girl Jean, it's not surprising that Yu Yi doesn't look down on me as a bad old man, but it's strange to say that he doesn't look down on a handsome, green youth like Yuzhua, right? Are you happy?" Zhang Yujiao asked curiously, "Grandpa Qi, can there be an explanation for the movement in the town ahead?" Qi Song patted his stomach and shook his head, "There is something to say, but I can't say it. When there is a chance in the future, you kid will invite me to have a good drink, and then look at your mood. Master Pei once reminded me not to divulge her whereabouts." Qi Song didn't dare to joke about this kind of thing. The old man picked up a few stones with his toes, waved his sleeves, and shot them into the air one after another. Qi Song seems to be bloated, but when he speaks of pure infuriating qi, he is actually as light as a feather at the moment, lifted up by the last stone and soars. At the highest point, the figure was suspended in the air, and the old man looked up from a high place. He discovered the trace of his disciple Lu Mo, who was leading a dark the night road. Qi Song fell to the ground and laughed loudly, "Follow me, whoever is slow, please drink." Yu Yi, who was wearing a night clothes, with a ghostly figure, rose and fell in the mountains and forests, as fast as a wisp of blue smoke, and came to the town at the foot of the mountain. She stood on a roof and threw a blood-soaked satin wrap in a small alley. "This head is on the neck of Gu Feng, Deputy Envoy Guanjuan Rong. As for Li Dang, the mountain at the Wuding Temple, no matter with Gu Feng, I won't survive tonight. It's also my father and Hehuan Mountain. I have an explanation for you. Don't continue to entangle, Miss Lu, you and Lu Tai must be in the middle of the incense stick. Nai, hurry up and leave the town, it's too late and you will be responsible for the consequences." Even if we are to accompany the capital Luojing to be held accountable in the future, we will have a clear conscience. Unlike in the past, when encountering headless female ghosts holding umbrellas inside and outside the town, Yu Yi would always act like an apprentice who flirts with a good family. In a sloppy manner, she brought the words to her, and after she finished speaking, she was in good shape and returned to the mountains. Zhou Qi called Lu Tai, and Lu Tai asked in a deep voice, "How do you say it? Do you want to stay here and wait for the three of them to go down the mountain?" Zhou Qi smiled and said, "Where do we need to worry about their situation? Go to Pomo Peak and wait for the news." Inside the Fanwan mansion, Chen Pingon suddenly asked, "How high will Zhao Fuyang's achievements be in the future?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "2 flowers bloom, 1 for each." "I have to say 2. Chen Pingon said, assuming this was done by Zhao Fuyang. "Tomorrow's Axian Yuaning will hopefully become a jade pu in the future, but it is not easy, and it will be bumpy on Tong Yezhou." Lu Qin raised his hand, pinched his fingers, and pondered for a moment. "If you don't succeed, you will fall short tonight. If you fail to make a mountain, you will lose this Taoist book, and Zhao Fuyang will fall from the bottleneck of the Golden Core realm to the Dragon Gate realm tomorrow. As for the future, it has to be the beginning of the fairyland." Except Bai Mao couldn't hear the content of the conversation, Pei Qian could hear the chat between Master and Lu Qin clearly. Chen Pingon said, "Did Headmaster Lu mention 1 or 2 situations less?" Lu Xindian the head smiled and said, "If Zhao Fuyang can stay here, and both the upper and lower mountains remain intact, he and the Lu clan's well water in Qingshan Kingdom will not violate the river water, and sooner or later will be beaten to death by Gu Kan, and naturally everything will end. In other words, Zhao Fuyang can successfully enter the nascent soul, and use the secret Danshan magical power of the Jin K faction, and finally leave this place of right and wrong. In case, Pindao just said that in case, he can become one day, Zhao Fuyang will be one of the many real dragons in the world, and Zhao Fuyang is expected to be the leader of the Panshan lineage, occupying the land of the land, and standing side by side with a small group of ascended cultivators who are very capable of fighting. Just say that at this moment, Zhao Fuyang has 4 paths to take. But which path Zhao Fuyang will take, the final achievement, and the future of the avenue, it seems that it depends on how the 2 of us talk at this dinner table. Just like this table, with you and me, with Pei Qian, and now there is the ghost of the wedge-shaped ridge, Bai Mao. If the poor man is willing, he can also bring in the steward Yu, the maid who brings wine and food. Chen Pingon asked, passing by Haoran, first teach Bai Mao a recipe for immortality, and then accept an anonymous grandson with ascension qualification. Master Lu does it all with ease. It can be heard that Zhao Fuyang wants to go to the top of the mountain. There is a prerequisite. He has to go with Lu Xin, the ancestor who is separated by many generations, to go to the Qingming world where the mountains are rich. Lu Qin asked back, looking at the history books, how come there are so many powerful people who are not princes or princes in the land of Longxing, within a county, or at most a county? Looking at several worlds, on the mountain, similar to the Lizhu cave in Aquarius Island, the Wuling juvenile grotto of the Qingshan dynasty, how many in total? Lu Qin put his chopsticks on top of his rice bowl, like a bridge suspended in the air, and asked himself, the world is going astray, how many roads can there be? Follow the right person, walk the right way, the world is the same as the time. Power. Going the wrong way, even if you are a hero with a higher heart than the sky, you will also be depressed and unwilling. Maybe there are occasional exceptions, after all, it is only an exception. After all, there is a broad road that leads to prosperity. Without perseverance, the strength of your feet is weak, of course, it is difficult to go far. Chen Pingon, you guessed wrong. If Zhao Fuyang wants to achieve the highest level, he can't be led by the nose, and he can't be under a big tree to enjoy the shade. This is his 5th path. Don't forget, why some people say that there is no pure wild cultivator of the upper 5 realms on the mountain. At the same time, don't forget, although Beta Shengjing Juzhong has a teacher, but in the true sense, he is also a wild cultivator of Shanzai, he is pure Yishou. Lu Qin picked up a chopstick. It's hard to support a single tree. Even if you get on the table and pull the food with your hands, it's not a good idea. You will be beaten by others, reprimanded by the elders, or driven off the table. Lu Qin picked up another chopstick. If you complement each other, you can eat with vegetables. As for how much you can eat, it depends on the appetite and stomach of the person sitting next to the table. A pair of chopsticks can be Qin Pingan in Nipping Lane and Ma Kushuan in Xinghua Lane, or Lu Xianyang and Qin Pingan, or Gu Qian and Song Jisin and Zhao Yao, Li Huai and Hu Feng and Dong Shui Jing, etc., and so on, and so on. It can be a dining table, a gambling table where the chairs are removed after losing a bet, or a table for offering incense. Jin Ke Pai Zushan, Qingjing Peak, and Jingxian Nunnery. The contemporary peak master is a golden cultivator who looks like an old woman, leading a group of direct descendants, standing near a pavilion outside the cliff with white clouds like the sea, and joined hands to welcome the visit of the Shangzong, immortal master. The founder of the Jin-Ke sect, before Bingjie passed away, she once left a decree for the direct disciples of the various peaks, or her last wish. She hopes that one day, the children of the Jin-Ke sect can accumulate merits and virtues and help her in the future. The Lingfei temple of the Baishuang dynasty was restored to its pedigree status and re-registered. That's all. At the same time, she also issued a death order. Even if her own sect is in the midst of life and death, she must not disturb the cultivation of her master in Lingfei temple. Whoever dares to violate this law is to deceive the master and destroy the ancestors. Therefore, even in that battle, the cultivators of Jin-Ke sent all the peaks, always abide by the ancestral teachings, and did not take the initiative to contact Ling Figuan. Even if the old master of Lingfei Temple and the immortal Emperor Chao Rong were born and made immortal achievements in the Battle of Leilongking, the Jin-Ke faction, especially the cultivators in the lineage of Jingxianin, were extremely excited, and they could only hide this secret deep in the heart. Therefore, when Lingfei Temple, the current Lingfei Palace, actually took the initiative to send a letter to Jingxianin, saying that the palace master would come here as a guest, and all the direct disciples of Jingxianin were overjoyed. In the moonlit night, a young female crown shrank the mountains and rivers, and was the first to appear on the cliff, followed by a white-haired monk who looked like a child, holding a whisk and carrying a mahogany sword, standing beside the female crown. Taoism has immortality, which can be rejuvenated and rejuvenated, with white hair and long babies. Afterwards, there was thunder in the sky, and a young man with disheveled hair arrived at a gallop. The sea of clouds along the way was cut open by swords, and he landed beside the white-haired boy. He wanted to reach out and touch the head of the child, but suddenly the sword light flashed, and the young man had to withdraw his hand. The old woman in Jingxianin could not help herself, her eyes were rosy, she bowed her head, and said in a trembling voice, "All disciples of Jingxianin in Qingjing Peak, pay tribute to the Patriarch Xiangjuan of Lingfei Palace." In fact, it's not that the old woman doesn't know the identities of the other two, but she has to pick out the Patriarch Xiangjuan, who is named Dongting, and call him honorably. In this way, it is equivalent to her taking the place of the Shishan Jin-Ke faction, a kind of respect to the Shangzong Lingfei Palace. To be precise, it was for the founder of the mountain and Na Lingfei Guan, who gave a bow. Xiangjuan said indifferently, "No need to be too polite, Xing Zi, except for you to stay, the rest will go to practice separately." The old woman waved her sleeves, "You all step back." Xiangjuan was the first to walk on a bluestone road beside the cliff, and the old woman named Xing Zi hurriedly gave the children and the young man a bowing ceremony. This Wei Zhenren, who seems to have no Taoist name, was a Taoist priest in charge of Lingfei Temple in the past. Now he has been promoted from Taoist Temple to Taoist Palace, but he has stepped down from the role of Master Law. But no one would think that this little Daotong boy was exiled. The reason could not be more simple. He was a close disciple of the previous watcher, Chao Rong. Whether it is the immortal mansion on the mountain or the sect down the mountain, it seems that there have always been only the first disciples who made mistakes, and the close disciples who never made mistakes. As for the Master Wen, whose name is Wen Shen, nicknamed Wen Lang, on the mountain, before the age of 40, he was already a martial artist who traveled far away. Even more of a wanderer. Xiang Jun just came to the Jin Ke faction from a small sect and separated from Dong Shui Jing not long ago. Just now, junior brother Wei was still in the Qingxing Kingdom's capital. As for junior nephew Wen Jingxian, it was no accident that he escaped from a certain fat powder nest. On the side of the Chuiqing peak of the Jin Ke school, there is a scenic spot, which is a backward waterfall. Xiangjuan stopped, looked at the waterfall that splashed like snow and thundered, and said, before Shizun went down the mountain for a long trip, he passed down a secret edict to allow her to resume her status as a genealogy of Lingfei Temple. She also said that you are in the line of Jingxianin, you can break away from the Jin Ke faction and recognize your ancestors and return to the ancestry with Lingfei Guan. Of course, you can't force it. The monks of Qingjing Peak can go or stay at will. As for the peaks of the Jin Ke faction outside the Jingxian Temple, it is not a problem. I guess they are not reconciled, so we can save ourselves. Passionate. The old woman was sobbing silently, facing the south, bowed down to the ground, bowed 3 times and 9 times, and kowtowed to the ancestor Chao Tianjun in thanks. Xiang Jun helped her up. If Qing Qian stops me, I can let junior brother Wei and Wen Qingxin stay on Qingjing Peak's side. After the old woman got up, she covered her face and cried many times. The young man smiled and said, have you heard that, after Tong Yizhou started spring this year, a lot of big things happened? Wei Jin sneered. Except for a few big surnamed families in Leilongking who are used to doing business, on the side of Aquarius, they almost don't like to inquire about the landscape and personnel of Tonggishao. The feng shui turns, and the monks on Tonggishao Mountain in the past also viewed the northern neighbor Aquarius in this way. Xiang Jun nodded and said, it's a big deal. Only then did Jinren Wei raise a little interest. How do you say it? Wen raised his hands carefully, shook his wrists, and said with a smile, the first major event is that a brand new sect named Qingping Sword Sect appeared in the southernmost part of the Yuan dynasty in the Great Yuan dynasty. This Qingping Sword Sect is the descendant of the Luopa mountain in Bay of Pingzu. The first sect master was named Shui Dongshan, a strange character whose origin was unknown. The only time this person appeared in public was our young hidden official. With his friend Lu Xianyang, we asked Jianzhenjiang Mountain together, during which Chui Dongshan appeared, and according to the genealogy of the patriarch of Luopao Mountain, he was considered a student of Qin Pingan. The level of the realm is a mystery. Xiang Jun said with a smile, you should show some respect to Mr. Qin of Luopao Mountain and the head of the Qingping Sword Sect. It stands to reason that, as the first sect master of the next sect, it must be the Jade Pure Realm. Later successors, on the contrary, have no requirements for realm. As long as there are cultivators of the Jade Pure Realm genealogy in the sect, they can sit on the top of the mountain. Besides, Qingping Sword Sect is an extremely rare kendo sect, which is unprecedented in Tongye continent. If Chui Dongshan is really a sword immortal in the Jade Pure Realm, how could there be nothing in Baoping continent where the war was extremely tragic? Achievement never made an inch. Just like the founding disciple of Qin Pingan, Pei Qian, who goes by the pseudonym Jing Qian, not only did she shine in the dotted battlefield in the central part, but also in several battlefields from the central part of Jinjiazhu to the north earlier, she has already gained a reputation. Therefore, there are different opinions on whether this Cui Dongshan is a jade pure realm or a sword immortal in the nascent soul realm. After all, with Chen Pingan's cultural identity and his military exploits in the Summer Palace, the Confucian Temple is an exception to the Qingping sword sect, allowing a monk who is not in the upper 5 realms to be the suzerain, which is normal. Anyway, in the past few years, several Haoran new sects are like this, not an isolated case. One smiled carefully and said, "It's a pity that the patriarch didn't allow me to go down the mountain, and I couldn't go to Delhi to accompany the capital, otherwise I could learn from that Pei Qian." Wei Xinjin sneered, "I think there is only one difference between Pei Qian and Pei Qian, so there are some fights. Then why don't you just ask her master and trouble that Chiningguan?" This martial nephew does not deny that he is a martial arts genius. Whenever he goes down the mountain to play, he likes to challenge others with boxing. When Axayan laughed and said, "Chen Pingan is 10 years older than me. If I had been reborn 10 years earlier, and now I don't talk about the martial artist of the end, there should be a bottleneck on the mountain." Xiang Jun said, "Pei Qian is not the kind of empty-skinned warrior you think. Her 7 and 8 realms back then will only be more solid than yours." One squinted his eyes carefully and said, "Hearing is false, seeing is believing. The second thing is related to Jade Guizong." The sect master Wei Ying went to the wilderness. The new master of Jiui Peak was a child named Xiu Ji, who was already a sword cultivator in the Dragon Gate realm at a young age. On the other side of Taiping Mountain, Huang Ting, the female crown, returned to Tongya continent from the colorful world, and there was an extremely rare one person and one sect in the history of Haoran. Since the first thing she did when she returned to her hometown was to ask Jian Xiaolongqiu, Huang Ting was already an unquestionable jade pure realm sword immortal. As expected, Huang Ting, who can be said to be the first person in Tong Yeshe's blessing, seems to have broken through, as easily as a woman changing clothes. Even more worthy of being a female cultivator who was as famous as that Jiang thief in the past. As for the little Longqiu, there was a world-shattering turmoil. The 2 nascent soul cultivators, who had no credit but also worked hard, did not know what wrong they had committed. They were personally detained by Immortal Longbeard from Longqiu in the Middle Earth and returned to the sect. After a long time, Situ Mengjing personally served as the mountain owner of Xiaolongqiu. It was like smashing a boulder into a pond, setting off turbulent waves, and without waiting for the onlookers to regain their calm, another flying peak came directly to fill up the small pond. After that, it was Xiao Longqiu who declared that the mountain was closed for a period of a year. In Pushan Yunkatang, Huang Yiyun seems to have just entered the first floor of the 10 realms of martial arts. Dafu Academy, Lao Jiao Qing Longzhou, deputy head of Linlu Academy in Piyun Mountain of Dali Dynasty, but Linlu Academy is not one of the 72 academies. The head of the academy, Zhou Mi, the head of the Yufu Academy in Beiju Luzhou, was also the first head in history who was punished to go to Gongdalan without major mistakes, and finally became the head of Tonggishao Wuxi Academy. In addition, Wen Yu, a very famous gentleman, served as the deputy head of Tianmu Academy. In the eyes of outsiders, the 3 academies in Tonggishao, where the chief and deputy mountain chiefs are all foreigners, are not ordinary undercurrent surging. Although when Jingxian was curious about Yi Yunyan's beauty, she didn't know the sky was so high that she wanted to go to Tong Yizhou and ask her for a fist. No matter what, he and Huang Yiyun are both on the same path of cultivation. They have been practicing for a long time, and they are not in a hurry. One murmured carefully, "Why is this Zhou Haijing so hard to find? She disappeared in the capital of Dali if she didn't see her. She couldn't be hidden by someone in a golden house, right?" After all, Pei Qian was ranked second among the 4 major martial arts masters in Aquarius Island, second only to Song Chongjing, who was said to have stepped into the threshold of the 11th realm. Then Zhou Haijing, who was at the bottom of the ranking, was also a female master, so one thought carefully. The perfect object to ask about boxing, the mountaintop realm, is still a beautiful woman who is hard to find even with a lantern. For this reason, one carefully went to the capital of Dolly, but it turned out that there was no Zhou Haijing who had left the capital, so one carefully searched for a month without seeing anyone. Xiangjin's heart was shocked for no reason. He raised his hand and rolled a green and faint letter transmission flying sword into his sleeve, and used a secret technique to open the ban on flying swords. The voice of the master sounded in the Heart Lake. Master has an order, leave Wei Fuxiao, and bring Wen Jingxian to Hehuan Mountain. Xiang Jun didn't think much about it at first, but felt a little awkward. She suddenly realized that Shizhuan was talking about the old man. Shizhuan. And the master of the female crown of the upper 5 realms is now in a side hall of the Fanwan mansion in Hehuan Mountain, reading palmistry to several maids. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.